What's that?
Yes, yes. Yeah.
So I got it. That's good. All good.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started. Good morning. My name is Zandra Campbell. I am the Associate Director of Public Services here at the library, and we are here to welcome you to the Albert O'Coon Library and Gallery Spotlight Symposium. The title of this year's symposium is Are You Good? Checking in with Maryland's young adults. It's just some general housekeeping. Our restrooms, we have 2 gender-neutral restrooms. They're to your left and to your right. And today's event will be on the library's YouTube channel. I am here to introduce our provost. UMBC's provost and senior vice president for academic affairs. Provost Van Doelman is an award-winning scholar in family social science. He has published over 100 articles and book chapters and edited or co-edited 3 books. He also founded and served as editor-in-chief of the Sage Publications journal, Emerging Adulthood. His research interests include adolescence and young adult relationships and experiences, externalizing behavior problems and aggression, and measurement and methodology. We are thrilled to have Provost Van Doelman here to share the research and conversations that are happening in our community involving and about young people. Please welcome Provost Van Doelman.
Thank you. Good morning. So this is really hard for me. I have 15 minutes, and I used to teach semester-long courses on this topic. So I'm going to try to keep it brief. I have some notes. But so I was like, this is for me fun because in all the other work that I do, I get to talk about research and young adults. So I'm like, this is really exciting. And then I started to brush up and reflect. And I'm thinking, like, are you good? Well, I know the answer. You're not good. This is not a good answer to have. But if you, for example, look in the United States, there used to be this thing called the happiness curve, where people were really happy in their young adult years. It declined, and then it increased again in people's 60s and early 70s. That's shifting, and it's no longer this curve, but it peaks during late adulthood. And so we've seen really a shift over the last decade among happiness among young adults. At the same time, also an increase in mental health problems, pretty staggering in young adulthood as well. So I'm just going to say, like, by and large, our young adults today are not okay. That's not the answer I want to give you this morning. I will hope not to give you, but I think it's important we point that out because the question really for us is, what are we going to do about it? And how are we going to support our young adults? Emerging adulthood, or this age period of 18 to 25, has been really a scientific area that's only been seriously studied for 20, 30 years. There was no organization, no field to speak of until like the mid-1990s. It started to evolve during that time, really as an opportunity to study an age period that sort of fell for people like in between. And at that point, people really didn't know what it was. The focus in the developmental literature had been on adolescence as a peak period of mental health problems, but also opportunities for growth. And increasingly, what we've learned over the past few decades is that that really is actually not completely true. Adolescence certainly is an area of challenge and rapid change, particularly in brain development and psychophysiological development. But a lot of the challenges that people face in their lifetime actually occur a little bit later in the late teens and 20s. For good reasons, because adolescence is much more structured. Students, like the large majority of students, are in a school setting. The larger majority of students are in a family home. And then at 18, we say, you're an adult now, go at it. And we're realizing that that actually is not the right approach, and that a lot of people still need guardrails and support in the late teens and 20s. And as a society, we're still, I think, trying to figure out how do we do that while also introducing new technology like social media or AI. And how do we develop our guardrails while we're also giving opportunities to explore. And as a society, we've been really good at introducing new things and tools. And we've been generally 5-10 years behind with thinking about how do we manage that. And I think a really good example of that is what you see with changes in laws on permitted cell phone use in high schools. I have an 18, 19, and 21-year-old. They grew up in a time where everybody had a phone all the time. And so as parents, you're like, no, you cannot have that, or we're not allowing that. Why not? Everybody else does. And now 10 years later, everybody's saying, no, it's actually not a good idea to have that during the school day. You can't focus. So I think like a major challenge is that we're often behind in thinking about what are the guardrails that we provide, both to support, allow for opportunity to explore, but also keep our adolescents and young adults safe. I think particularly at UMBC, we have an opportunity to think about what is our role to contribute to the science in this area, also community engagement and practice, particularly because we're a minority serving institution. And still up today, the large majority of studies on this age group are focused on white Caucasian individuals in the United States. We have such a diverse body of students that I think we have a responsibility to contribute to our understanding of risk and opportunity in this area. I've talked to several people on campus about potentially launching a life study where we would follow college students over a period of time. Other universities like Virginia Commonwealth, Kent State have done this for a long period of time. I think we have an opportunity in this space to work with our students, to work with our faculty, but also contribute to much needed understanding of inclusive excellence in this age period, because quite honestly, we know very little about that. And I think it's important to focus on that. I really hope that you this morning have some stimulating conversations, discussions. I hope this is an opportunity to bring our community together in this area. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for caring about our young adults, because quite honestly, they need it today more than ever. So thank you.
Good morning. My name is Joanna Gatsby, and I'm here to introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker is Danielle Locke. Danielle is a doctoral candidate in the Human Services Psychology program at UMBC, where she studies intimate partner violence prevention and intervention with a special focus on young adult populations. Her research utilizes quantitative and qualitative methods to explore the prevalence, measurement, and mental health impacts of cyber dating abuse, with implications for clinical assessment and intervention. She is also an instructor at UMBC, where she co-developed, evaluated, and currently teaches a first-year seminar course on preventing gender-based harm. Danielle is also actively involved in violence prevention efforts on campus and is deeply committed to translating empirical findings into effective prevention and intervention programs. Let's give our first speaker, Danielle Locke, a big warm welcome.
Good morning. Somebody please help me. Oh. Hopefully. Whatever it is, I will present on. I'm used to ad-libbing. I'm a graduate student. Okay, this is what I do. Good morning. I'm really excited to be here. Like most of us researchers, we basically foam at the mouth anytime someone asks us to talk about the stuff that we do all of the time. And so I was like, of course, I'd be so happy to yap at a group of engaged listeners for 45 minutes. Hopefully you learned something. So a quick introduction to me, even though you just heard my bio, but an introduction to my sort of educational background so you know where I'm coming from. I graduated from Quinnipiac University in 2014 with a bachelor's in psychology and criminal justice. So I've always been really interested in violence and aggression, the intersection between the criminal justice system and mental health and psychology in the world of prevention and intervention. I actually spent a lot of time in abuse intervention programs. So those are programs for individuals, mostly men that I've worked with in men's groups, who have been court involved for some sort of relationship violence incident, and it's a intervention program so that we can hopefully stop them from engaging in relationship violence in the future. So that's where my research kind of started, and I've transitioned to working more with college students, and a lot of that is because of my interest in how technology seems to be shaping the way relationships are started, how they're maintained, how they're even ended. Technology is really inextricable from young adults' lives. And so I've sort of drifted into the world of cyber dating abuse and trying to understand what makes some behaviors harmful, what are even some really pro-social beneficial behaviors via technology that young adults are using in their romantic relationships. And of course, the intersection with relationship abuse. We'll cover what is cyber dating abuse, what some of the implications are, and what are some things that hopefully we can take from this room to do about it, to change about it. I really like to end classes and presentations with some sort of call to action, because so much of our research ends up on ProQuest or PsycInfo or what have you, and it's never read or translated or used in any way. So I like to find small ways that we can take what we're learning and use it. So a lot of the data presented today is, from peer-reviewed data, but a lot of the quotes that I'll use is from my qualitative research for my master's thesis. So hopefully that will help sort of exemplify some of the information that I'm going to share. Let's just start with some technology use stats. I don't think any of this will be particularly shocking if you've interacted with young adults at all, which most of you probably have if you are not a young adult yourself. But I really want to zoom out before we zoom in, particularly on relationships, because to understand how technology shapes the way on how young adults connect romantically, you have to understand how totally saturated their lives, and I'm 30 now, so I can say they and not our, their lives, our lives are with technology, with screens. And I also, this whole presentation is not meant to demonize young adults and how they use technology. Again, we're going to talk about some pro-social ways that technology is being used to start relationships and maintain them. But I am a relationships violence researcher, so it will skew to the harmful side, especially towards the end. But it's not meant to demonize how young adults are using technology in any way. It's a part of their culture, our culture, and the society that we live in. But American young adults, meaning 18 to 25, 26 years old, when I say young adults, now average about 7 hours or more of screen time per day. Phone screen time is up 60 to 80% compared to pre-pandemic levels. That's a huge jump. And I'm sure we can all understand why, right? So much of life was already being conducted via technology, and then everything that was left was shifted to a technological format. And we've seen that sustained increase over time because we've realized this is easier. It's easier. There's less friction. There's less vulnerability. It reduces my distress to use technology to navigate hard things, to navigate relationships. So again, not to blame, but because of the pandemic and so much of life was shifted to a technology interface, that has sort of had this like lasting repercussion. So Gen Z, 1996 to 2012. I am not Gen Z, by the way. I am a millennial. Averages 7+ hours on their phone alone. So not even really counting, they're using their laptop. So that's pretty staggering. In 2014, 2015, only 24% of teens and young adults were online almost constantly, but by 2024, that number has doubled, that statistic has doubled. And I imagine that has only increased in the last year and a half, 2 years since that data has come out. So think about what it means almost constantly, right? How could that not affect romantic relationships, peer relationships, friendships, family relationships if it's almost constantly? So of course, we're going to see some impacts here. So what does this mean for relationships? Technology doesn't just change how they communicate, it shapes how they start relationships, how they maintain connection with a significant other over time, and also how they end relationships. You ever heard of ghosting? Yeah, okay, great. We're up with the times. Okay, yeah, right? And we're going to see a theme of this inability or discomfort with face-to-face interaction, especially when it comes to conflict, because that's hard and that's scary and that's difficult. And if we can reduce that distress, we're going to do it because we're humans and that's what we do. We naturally seek ways to reduce our emotional and physical distress. And it's expected and normative, and also possibly challenging and problematic in the long term. It also can shape what a person expects from their partner, and we'll go more into this in the next few slides. There's 4 core themes that seem to emerge across the literature and my own research. The first is that access and opportunity for relationships has changed, has really shifted significantly, and not in a bad way, right? Technology expands who you can meet and how you can meet them. Think about rural communities. Think about LGBTQ plus individuals who are not openly out, who are maybe in a rural community who it's dangerous for them to seek a relationship partner. It's actually amazing how much connection can happen and has happened for communities that felt really limited by their geographic location. Connection and relationship maintenance has changed. Technology is really integral for sustaining relationships across time and distance. Think of college students. Once upon a time, you'd leave your partner for college, and that might have been it, because it's very hard to maintain a relationship if you don't have that contact and you can't see them. Maybe you're too far away. You can't afford the train ticket to go see them, and relationships dissolve. And so we're seeing better relationship connection and maintenance actually through the use of technology. Even students who I talked to in my interviews who, were in relationships with people on campus reported that they really relied on using text messaging to touch base. Maybe they were both busy all day to touch base with each other. Snapchat, although I think Snapchat's dying out. But when I was doing the interviews in 2023, Snapchat was still a thing, but technology changes very quickly, people. It is hard to keep up. That's why we have to publish our research as soon as we've got the data. But it's beneficial. And now we're skewing towards the negative, which I told you I would do. But technology also introduces new stressors and expectations. What does it mean if you can have access to your partner all day long? if that's a possibility. And what does it mean if they choose to not do that? What does that mean about your relationship? Are you okay? Are you good? Are you solid? I don't know, maybe not. They didn't respond to my Snapchat. They didn't read my text, or they did read my text messages because we have read receipts. And I know they read it, but they didn't respond. So you have all these subtle cues that actually have a really big impact on what we're expecting, what students are expecting, young adults are expecting of their relationship partners that are way more complicated than I think I understand. It's really nuanced and complex, and there is a lot of very subtle information that is being gained through how somebody sends a text message, what emoji they use, how long they took, whether or not they responded to that video that you sent them on Instagram or they ignored it. So there's a lot of subtleties and a lot of nuance that can have big implications on how a relationship is continued, especially in times of conflict, right? When things get hard. Oh, the fourth one's not supposed to say conflict and pressure, by the way. That was me. That was me doing grad student things. It's supposed to say context. The same technology can be helpful and hurtful. So context and the specific dynamics of that person, that individual, but also that relationship dynamic matter enormously. Something that I was very interested in with my master's thesis interviews is understanding how particular behaviors that we, researchers behind a desk, have labeled as abusive are they seen as abusive and harmful to everyone? For example, my partner tracks my location on my phone. That's on a measure of cyber dating abuse. Yes or no? Yes, indicating an abusive behavior has been experienced. I talked to so many students who said that that was a big moment in their relationship when they shared location, that was a sign of trust and mutual respect. And it was actually really exciting for them, and they liked it. And they felt really solid and grounded in their relationship because they had their location shared. So when we're understanding abuse, it's very tricky for us to take behaviors that we're assuming are hurtful and harmful, and then putting it on a measure and saying, okay, if we're talking about big numbers, right, our data is going to be off. We're not going to have good prevalence. We're not going to really understand what's hurtful. So I really focused on that in my master's thesis, understanding context. When and where and how are these particular behaviors actually hurtful? Or could they even be neutral or pro-social in relationships? And they really ran the gambit. I had people who would talk about particular behaviors as really particularly hurtful that had lasting harm. And I had others who said the exact opposite about particular experiences, that it was pro-social and good for their relationship. So that just gives us insight at how really nuanced and complex this can get when we get into the nitty-gritty details. I think we often think about abusive behaviors as, okay, maybe somebody is putting an air tag in my car and tracking me and following me and showing up at work. Yes, that's abusive and that's harmful. And I think a lot of people know that. But when we get into very particular behaviors that on paper may or may not be hurtful, depending on the person and the relationship, it's gray. It's a little muddy in terms of our work, measurement, understanding, our research, what we can do to help. So we know that technology is integral at every stage of relationships: finding, starting, maintaining, and ending. When I asked my participants for my master's thesis, what is one word you would use to describe how technology has impacted your relationships, or the relationship between technology and your romantic relationships, they said words like necessary, crucial, important, right? Unprompted. I just asked for a word. And most of the participants said something like that. Some said something like hard, confusing, complicated, but the majority said it's really, really important. It's very important to me. Now, that doesn't necessarily lean good or bad, helpful, hurtful, but it does show us that we need to be paying attention, because if this is necessary for them to start, maintain, end romantic relationships, and you know how important romantic relationships are to college students. They are typically very important, very high up on their list, maybe a little bit higher than their studies sometimes. We really need to be paying attention to what's happening here. And here's a quote from one of my participants. Kind of crazy to think about how much just texting during the day was at the core of our relationship. We would have never made it without it. And this is students who are on campus together, right? So they were physically in the same place, but they would have never made it without being able to text each other throughout the day. Oh my gosh. Let's talk a little bit about relationship finding. So 53% of Americans under 30 report using dating apps as a primary way to meet people. Primary, right? Tinder, Hinge. I've been to a few Hinge and Bumble weddings in the last couple years, and it's great. I think there's also a lot less shame around it. You know, it's normal. It's absolutely normal and normative. About 60 million active Tinder users globally and generates 30 million matches per day. So these are like really big numbers. This is a lot of people. Online meeting overtook meeting through friends as the + way heterosexual couples met. And that was in 2013. And that was with heterosexual couples. LGBTQ plus couples absolutely overtook that before 2013, right? So this also isn't entirely new. I think we're just catching up a little bit. And in the world of technology, we're always going to be playing catch up as researchers and as educators. And even as peers, we're always going to be right behind a moving line because it changes so fast. And then I started to think, why? Why are so many people choosing to start relationships, to reach out to other people online? Why are they using Tinder, Hinge, Bumble? Obviously, I kind of had a thought, okay, the geographic restriction is probably at play here. That's a huge reason somebody would go ahead, and if they're in a rural community, or again, LGBTQ plus or whatever, if they don't have a dating pool that they're satisfied with, online makes sense. But what about everyone else? And so I was asking about that in my interviews, and one of my participants said, it's just so much easier to put yourself out there when it's just online. That way, if it ever goes wrong, I'm not sitting across from them feeling the rejection. So you start to see this theme of avoidance, of I don't want to experience the distress that comes with vulnerability and putting myself out there. And that's the scariest part. Right? That's so frightening. Just say, hey, I like you. Do you want to get a coffee with me after class? That's terrifying. That is so scary. And also, you know, if you think about COVID and how that impacted social skills, like that's real, and that's absolutely valid. And so we have this avoidance, this fear of the distress that rejection and vulnerability can cause. And just sending a text or being on Bumble or Hinge, something doesn't go well, they reject you. Who cares? Yeah, it hurts, it stings for a minute, but you don't have to see them. You don't have to feel that in person, right? That's so much worse. And so, of course, like I said before, we're humans. We're always going to gravitate towards the path of least resistance. It's in our biology. And so this opportunity arises where it's very normal and expected to actually find relationship partners online. Why would I not do that? That seems so much less scary. And so again, normalizing it, it makes a lot of sense. And also, from a clinical lens and developmental lens, it's a little concerning, right? Because we want to develop distress management. We want young adults to be able to have the self-confidence and the self-esteem to put themselves out there, to be vulnerable, and if something doesn't go the way they'd hoped, recover and recoup and have that grit, right? And so we're seeing less and less opportunities for that to happen. And we're seeing more and more opportunity to actually avoid distress and vulnerability. I do want to talk a little bit more about access and the expanded dating pool, because this, I think, is one of the ways that technology has really helped, especially marginalized populations, which I know is a focus of today's talks too. But before the advent of the internet, people really met partners through family, church, work, and friends. So that's pretty geographically limited. It's the people who are in your social circle already, the people around you. So that's very structurally limited, ideologically limited, racially segregated social networks typically. So online dating actually can break those constraints, and couples who met online are more likely to be interracial and interethnic than those who meet offline. So we're just seeing more opportunities to meet people who are different from the people who are directly near you in your social circle, in your geographic circle, which is a good thing. That's great. The proportion of interracial marriages increased rapidly after the introduction of first dating websites in 1995. We see this big jump, and it's not a coincidence. It's people being able to find and connect with people who are not directly around them. And that's really good. That's really beneficial. When you talk about rural young adults, they really do rely on social media and dating apps. It's not a luxury for them. It's necessary. It feels very necessary to find dating partners that they really connect with, or who maybe are different from the people who they're around all the time. And like I mentioned before, for LGBTQ young adults, 51% of LGBT adults consistently use dating apps, which is the highest of any demographic. And I think that number is actually fairly conservative. There are specific apps for LGBTQ+, which function as safe spaces. They reduce this concept of identity uncertainty, not knowing if the person that you're talking to is LGBTQ or not. And they create a sense of community, shared community. And if you think about the intersection for queer rural users, they might be the only available source of dating partners who you can safely seek in your area, right? Because in your geographic area, it may not be safe for you to go seeking a dating partner, or it just might not be available to you. This is a quote from one of my participants. I was from a very rural area. I was not out, and so it was just really hard to meet people, but I was able to meet her. And she described having at least some normal teenage experiences because of apps and social media. Let's talk a little bit about connection and maintenance. So technology is now the primary infrastructure for maintenance in young adult relationships. And by maintenance, I mean just normative daily connection between two people. So talking, sending pictures, sending videos or memes that remind you of them, these touch points of connection throughout the day that maintain a relationship. Some common daily maintenance behaviors: texting, video calls, Snapchat, social media, shared online gaming, voice notes. Digital communication can actually reinforce in-person connection. I know we're sitting here thinking maybe it would replace it, but the research doesn't say that. The research says that these are actually correlated, that the more people are texting and having these point of contact throughout the day, the more they actually are willing and able to see each other in person, right? They can navigate plans throughout the day. They can find 10 minutes to catch lunch together. They can organize better and easier to see each other in person. So hopefully that's a little bit of good news, right? It's not entirely a replacement for the in-person connection. And positive social media behaviors, so displaying your relationship status, posting photos together, public expressions of connection, of affection on social media or otherwise, are associated with greater relationship quality and satisfaction. These are ways that we can use technology, or that technology is being used to actually strengthen bonds and create closeness and maintain strong relationships for young adults. I also want to talk a little bit about long distance relationship couples. I mean, this is really, really important think about college students. Think maybe, they met in their hometown and one goes to one coast, the other goes to the other for college, right? It's common. Young adulthood is so transitory, like geographically, you move for jobs, you move for internships, you move for school study abroad, right? So a lot of our students at some point have been or will be in what's considered a long distance relationship. It's very common. Text messaging specifically predicts high relationship satisfaction in long distance relationships, and video calls are really important. So like FaceTiming is very important. Zoom, they're the closest digital substitute for in-person contact, and they actually reduce loneliness, feelings of loneliness, and increase connection. Just a video call. So it's really impactful and important and can be really useful, especially when you're not able to be geographically together. And this affords a shared presence across distance. But it's not all good news. Sorry, the buck kind of stops there. Again, I'm a violence researcher, so this is going to be skewed in a particular way. Technology enables avoidance. We already talked about this, but especially during conflict. So think of how important conflict and conflict resolution is to long-term relationship success. It's pretty important to be able to do that and predicts whether or not a relationship will last. I mean, Gottman predicted that, right? The 4 horsemen, right? It's hugely important to be able to navigate conflict. And one of the themes that came up in my interviews is feeling stunted, feeling like they couldn't. Students reported specific examples where they would be in person together and something might happen and they'd start to get into an argument and they'd decide mutually to take a break. Great. Love that. That's fantastic. But then continue their conversation via text. And it's a way to reduce emotional arousal. Like, this is too distressing and scary for me to be in conflict with you in person. How can I reduce the distress? And so they separate, which taking a break is a fantastic way to de-escalate. However, in typical relationship education, we would recommend coming back together physically, but instead students are using the tools that are available to them, which is technology. So they do the right thing. They take sometimes the right thing. Gets too distressing, they take a break, a physical break from each other, but then they continue the argument, the conflict via text message, where you cannot see the other person, how they're responding to you. You can say things that maybe you don't mean, or they can be misconstrued. You can decide to stonewall, which is another Gottman word, where you can just block them for the night or turn your phone off, right? And so you have all these ways that really harmful relationship dynamics can creep in when we start to avoid positive pro-social conflict management and mediation, which is missing. Here's a quote. "We spend all our time on our phones and we'll even leave and continue to text if we have something hard to talk about we felt like we couldn't do in person. It feels so much easier that way, even though it can cause confusion sometimes. It feels kind of silly to say and kind of embarrassing." So this participant had some awareness that this is kind of a silly thing to do, or what they felt was a silly thing to do, but this was the way that they knew how to manage conflict in their relationship. So the habit continues, those behaviors continue because they're reinforced. right? We're all just mammals. We're all just animals, right? It's all behaviorism. And so we avoid, our distress gets reduced, and that behavior, that avoidance is reinforced over time. And that connection gets stronger and stronger, and our ability to tolerate the distress becomes lower and lower and lower. You see that in every mental health concern that exists, right? So I really zoomed in on this concept of avoidance because I am a clinical psychology student, right? So the clinical concern here for me started to be a developmental one. We don't really know what the long-term consequences are for young adults quite yet. You know, maybe what's going to happen when they have a conflict with somebody in the office. Are they going to leave and go message them on Slack because they can't handle the in-person? I'm serious. Like we don't know quite yet what this means for distress tolerance, to use a DBT term. Let's also talk about conflict and pressure. So I mentioned this earlier. Technology has created this expectation of constant availability because it's possible. And if you can talk to me all day, why would you not want to? Why don't you want to? Are we good? Right? You didn't respond to my text message at 8 o'clock this morning, and it's 8:32, and I know that you get up at 8:30. Are we good? Right? It creates distress and fear and relationship anxiety because we can be constantly connected. So what does it mean if we're not? Young adults describe expecting a text back within 5 to 10 minutes from their relationship partner and experience negative emotions when that does not happen. So it's quick. They're not talking. They didn't text me back in 6 hours. 5 to 10 minutes, I want to text back. I expect my partner to respond, and I will feel badly about the relationship, about them, about myself if that does not happen. Delayed text replies in particular can be interpreted as disinterest, disrespect, emotional distance. So we're seeing these much bigger narratives about the relationship with these micro moments. We have to pay attention to these really small moments in daily relationship experiences of young adults that can compound over time and cause real harm and real challenges. Text-based communication can strip away tone, facial expression, body language, so that emotional information that we're getting every millisecond when we're talking to somebody in person is missing. And there are implications for that as well. If I'm having a conflict with my partner and I say something not very nice, which I am a married person, I do say things that are not very nice sometimes, I immediately have this feedback from my partner that I'm hardwired to receive and understand that I hurt their feelings. I did something that was outside of my values, and I need to shift or I need to change. We get this immediate, instantaneous feedback, right? We're just animals, it's all behaviorism, about what our behavior is doing. And whether we take that and use it, I mean, that's up for the individual in that moment, but we at least have that information to use. And so if I'm sending text messages, and I say something kind of hurtful because, you know what, I'm not looking at them. I can't see if they're hurt or not. So I don't have that immediate sort of negative, icky feeling like, oh, I just did something I shouldn't have done, that shame or that guilt. I can just go off. And you know what? I don't even have to respond to them if I don't want to. I can say what I want to say and I can just turn my phone off. I don't even have to get the response from them. I can just let it out there. So it creates avenues for us to engage in some harmful behaviors. That doesn't mean that all young people are out there to hurt their partners. That's not true, but it happens because the way technology has shifted what the landscape of relationships looks like. Differences in preferred conflict medium is a source of friction. So I like to fight in person. You only want to fight over text message. That was interesting for me to learn about. Apparently, that's a thing. You can have different preferences for that. And some researchers found texting is rated superior to in-person for some emotionally charged conversations because it can reduce escalation. Now, preferred doesn't mean better. It just means preferred. They like it better, which again, avoidance of distress, right? Keep carrying that theme throughout. Some of my participants identified strategies that they do use to combat this challenge of communication and not really knowing how to communicate via text, but trying really hard. Sometimes when I'm trying to really convey what I mean, I add an emoji or like a GIF so the other person knows I'm okay or I didn't mean something in a harsh way. It helps the other person understand me better. So even the use of punctuation, again, really nuanced. The use of punctuation, a period is considered harsh. Just so you know, if you send a text message and put a period at the end, a young person is considering what you just sent as harsh. So take that as your tidbit. That is your learning fact for the day. Minute, really, really minute. And if you think about it, we're getting all this minute feedback, very like micro expressions when we're in person. So it's not outlandish for us to really read into micro expressions, their eyebrows, the upturn of their lips, their body language. We're doing that all the time. Our brains are created for that. So we've just now applied that to a technological medium. And so all that nuance is still being read, but it may not be communicated in as direct or clear way. It may be miscommunicated, misunderstood, etc. But they're trying, okay? Emojis seem very helpful. Correct use of punctuation seems very helpful. Correct as in socially correct, not actually grammatically correct. Using GIFs, photos, voice notes, even. All right, gotta hurry up. So now let's sort of shift into the world of cyber dating abuse. So it's the same features as sustained closeness, like location sharing, response time, social media, et cetera, the things we all talked about can also, as you can probably predict, become tools for power and control, which is the axis of relationship violence. So the features allow for a type of surveillance that has really no historical equivalent. We weren't able to do this. It is new avenues. Some of the behaviors, the function of them is the same, which is actually what my dissertation is about, trying to understand cyber dating abuse and emotional abuse, and are there new functions or are they really the same functions and acting in a different way? So stay tuned for that, hopefully soon. But we have these new abilities to be constantly connected, hyper-connected, expectations to be hyper-connected. We can monitor location real time, see when you read a message, track who follows you, reach you at any hour, no physical barriers, no geographic limitations. So you can see how this would lend itself to behaviors that can be hurtful and harmful and controlling and abusive. So cyber dating abuse is a pattern of technology-facilitated behaviors used to harm, control, harass, or surveil a romantic partner. And it frequently does co-occur with physical partner violence. Not all the time. There are people who report just cyber dating abuse, but think about, again, people who are geographically not close to their partner, so it's not possible for their partner to physically abuse them, right? But another thing we're trying to understand and current research questions is, are there people who don't actually, would never go on to hurt their partner in person and just only seem to cause harm to their partner via technology? And that would be really interesting to us, because then it tells us that technology is creating a way for people to hurt their partners when they maybe otherwise would not have. But for the most part, it does co-occur with physical violence, especially with more severe forms of cyber dating abuse or more chronic patterns of cyber dating abuse. We definitely see an overlap with in-person violence. So there's two primary dimensions of cyber dating abuse. You have direct aggression, which is probably what a lot of us would think of. So threatening, insulting, humiliating messages, pressuring a partner to share explicit images, public shaming, etc. Those I think we can kind of see and we're like, abusive. Yes. And students, young adults agree with that, right? But then we get into this more control and monitoring, and that is the gray area where some of these behaviors are actually seen as pro-social for some young adults, and others it's really harmful, and it really matters the context in which they're being used and the impact on the person, on the relationship. So checking location, password sharing, accessing accounts, monitoring social media, controlling who a partner communicates with or checking up on who they're communicating with, etc. Prevalence range very widely depending on how you measure it. This is somewhat of a new area, although not brand new at this point. But there are a lot of there are various definitions of what cyber abuse is. And if you focus very particularly on those severe abusive behaviors and you need a certain threshold of behaviors for you to say, yes, that person is in the victim category, you're going to get, of course, a much smaller prevalence rate. Versus the opposite, if we have this long list of behaviors, some of which may be harmful or maybe not, and you say yes to one, then you're in this sort of victim category. You're going to get a much higher prevalence rate. So that is why we see these really disparate rates. Among college students, we're seeing about 12 to 25% report victimization, 15 to 23 report perpetration when really conservative thresholds are used, meaning they have to report X amount of behaviors in order for something to be considered, okay, you're in a victim box for data analysis. So that's, a quarter, right? Using conservative measures. And CDA is often bidirectional, just like all relationship violence. If you didn't know that already, relationship violence is largely bidirectional. So that's also really complicated. Here are a few quotes from my research participants about their negative experiences. I'll just read the first one for time. I didn't know he had my location turned on my phone, and he never used it during the relationship. After we broke up, all of a sudden he texted me asking who I was going out with. I went on a date with a new person to a place I used to go to, so I knew he was somehow watching me or following me. Eventually I learned he had my location for my phone and was just following me around for months, right? One person had declined to share her location with a partner and responded by sending demeaning text messages accusing her of being unfaithful. This experience evoked a feeling of just total worthlessness and like, I messed up, like I should want that. So there's shame in not participating in some of these normalized behaviors that we know can be really harmful, but there's still shame around saying, no, I don't want to do that with you. Because again, why? Why don't you want to share your location with me? What does that mean? Should I not trust you? Right? We have this technology available to us. Why would you not want to use it? So I think we can understand that cyber dating abuse has some negative implications, right? Depression, anxiety, stress, substance use, all associated with experiencing cyber dating abuse. And what was really stand out to me in my thesis was how many people didn't talk about their cyber dating abusive experiences or wouldn't even label it that way. By the way, they just said bad experiences or the bad stuff that happened, right? They don't say the word abuse. That was not, I would say it and they'd be like, oh no. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, tell me. So they're not labeling it as abusive and they're also not telling anybody because they're not labeling it as abusive. It's just some weird thing that happened that they didn't really like and maybe they just, broke up and they never decided to revisit that again. But now that they were talking to me in this interview, they're like, maybe that was hurtful. I see how that was abusive. I had a few students have like revelations just in the interview process because the first person who's ever asked them about these experiences. No one's asked before. No one's cared. Or students who did actually talk to their friends, or one student talked to their family about it, they were blamed or dismissed, compounding the harm. I had no one to talk to because they would just tell me I'm being prude and essentially making me feel less than because I'm a guy and I'm supposed to want that stuff. This is in regards to sending explicit photos. It was hard not knowing who to turn to or how I was supposed to feel. All I remember is that I felt alone and stuck. So this is something that I think really the quantitative literature can miss, and some of the benefits of these qualitative interviews and qualitative research is just the experience of interviewing can be really powerful. The experience of asking questions about experiences that, you know, are hard, but finally someone's asking me about it. Someone's giving me the words to say, oh no, that was abusive. Yeah, that hurt. That hurt my feelings. Okay, I'm almost done. If somebody's stressed and timing me. A little bit. I'm seeing the micro expressions and I'm moving quickly. Almost done, I so promise. So there's a gap here. Also, we're academics. We know we could talk all day. I know I could. So young adults in my research, in my study, told me they had no education about cyber dating abuse in high school, middle school, college, etc. They knew about cyberbullying, right? Which is between peers. They know it's bad. We don't cyberbully. We know bullying is bad. They've drilled that into our brains since second grade. I know not to do that. But cyber dating abuse was like this whole unknown world. They know maybe I shouldn't send naked pictures of myself. They knew that, but nothing else. Nothing else had ever been discussed with them. And we already talked about how much of relationships are occurring via technology, how much people's lives are occurring via technology. So we're really missing something here. There's really a big gap in education, in awareness, and prevention. Again, it's not just knowledge, it's a naming issue. They can't identify, challenge, or disclose behaviors that they don't have language for. If they don't know that this thing is abusive, if this experience they had can actually be considered relationship violence or is harmful, or that people would believe them that it was hurtful and harmful, or that it's normal and valid for feeling really gross when somebody's, you know, sends you a bunch of text messages in a row asking you where you are, then how are they possibly going to process that themselves, to communicate that to others? How are they going to be able to respond when somebody tells them that they've had that experience, a peer or a family member? They can't. It's absent from a lot of prevention programming, which continues to focus really heavily on sexual assault and physical violence, leaving cyber dating abuse really unaddressed. All right, so I'm going to leave you with what can we do? So as educators and mentors, we can name it. We can use the term cyber dating abuse. We can educate ourselves on what that might look like. So if you're here today, congratulations, you've done that. We can use the term, we can give examples, we can explain how, yeah, those things, that direct aggressive, like that is clearly abusive, but also like some other stuff that's seen as normal, that can also be hurtful too. It depends. Do you find it hurtful? How do you feel when that happens? So that's addressing this gray area. So not really focusing entirely only on the obvious problematic behaviors, but really just discussions about what it means to share your location, how to have conflict with another person in person, why you might not want to disappear into your dorm rooms and text each other instead, and how, you know, we can actually change the narrative and promote more of this in-person non-avoidance of distressing relationship experiences. And we can just normalize talking about it, right? Talking about it with students, but also having them talk to each other. What do we expect from each other? And why? How do I feel when you need me to text you at 8:02 in the morning every day? And is that going to work for me or not? Right? Just open conversation. And I don't know if there's many students listening or watching, but as a peer, we can believe and validate what someone tells us. We can learn the warning signs and name them. We can resist pressure to explain away behavior as love, jealousy, or normal. And we can just ask our friends, does it bother you when they do that? How do you feel? Does it hurt you? Just asking these like discussion questions, like, how do you feel when that happens? And just a quick acknowledgement, this presentation wouldn't exist without the college students who sat down with me, often for the first time, and shared their experiences. And I hope that this gives them something back, right? Language, so they can describe their experiences, validation, and a reason for people in this room to keep talking about those experiences and hopefully prevent in the future. Went a couple minutes over. I'm sorry, I can't help it. Here are some references, but that's it.
Thank you so much for sharing all of your work. I really appreciate it. I think our audience members also, really appreciate all the work that you put into this. We've sort of run out of time for Q&A. We need to move into, it's okay. It's okay. Maybe we can move the questions, just push it a little further down the road today, but we're going to prepare for our next speaker to come. Thank you again.
Oh, yeah. I know that. Oh, I haven't usually at once. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. Oh, I've spent a lot. Yeah. Not recently, I spent probably the first 3 years of grad school. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Lisa's such a powerhouse. No? I would never read them. Mine are really dense. Why? It should be. Oh.
Do one thing real quick. Sure. If there's a panel, I'm just gonna make it so that people can see a little easier. Mhm.
Oh, no.
We do just like this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think we need. Yeah. So I'm gonna be sure they centralized it out really, really well. Yeah.
Is your mic on, Helen? Okay. Thank you all so much for being here today. We are going to move on to our first panel discussion for today. The title of this discussion is Bridging the Gap, a conversation with community seniors. Here with me today are Donna Martin and Ellen Loy. And before I get started, I would like to read their bios. So I'm going to start here with Donna first. Having graduated from West Virginia Wesleyan College, Drew University, and Wesley Theological Seminary in Washington, D.C., Donna Martin plausibly could have been a professional student, but life intervened. She raised 3 children, began to work during their senior high school years, and since her education has been quite liberal, naturally, activism flourished. There, she held several outreach ministry positions and established a multi-service outreach ministry. All the while, she was a closeted gay woman in ministry. During her final 8 years of working, she was a hospice chaplain. In the 1960s, she began to attend protests. During the 80s and 90s, her activism was primarily for equality. She served on the board of Equality Maryland, protested and contributed in many ways. In 2017, she organized and led a 5,000-person rally in Baltimore, gaining notoriety. Today, she continues to protest and empower others to find their best activist selves. And next, we have Ellen Loy. Ellen Loy is a 76-year-old retired clinical social worker, an attendee of Woodstock in 1969 and a protester of the Vietnam War. Ellen is truly a child of the 60s. Calling Baltimore home for the last 50 years, Ellen has 2 grandkids, one still in high school and one in college. Her college-age grandchild recently changed their pronouns to they, them. This has been a journey and a learning opportunity for the whole family. She holds degrees from George Washington University and the University of Maryland. Throughout her professional life, she primarily supported individuals affected by domestic violence. As a former adjunct professor at the University of Maryland School of Social Work, Ellen worked with graduate students at their field placements. She is grateful for the experience of following students as they work towards becoming their professional selves. Currently, her life revolves around political activities, lifelong learning, spending time with family and friends, and caring for her physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. She has a great deal of respect for young people today who face enormous challenges personally, professionally, and globally. Join me in welcoming our panelists today. So our first question that we're going to move to what has been your experience with college-aged adults? Good, bad, happy to share.
I have 2 grandchildren that are in the 18 to 25 year. And one experience I had with my granddaughter, who is my favorite granddaughter because she's my only granddaughter, is that we were in a family situation and in their home. Oh no, I wanted to say the other thing first. She was dating this guy, and I met him, and then the next time I met her, I said, well, how's so-and-so doing? And she says, well, I'm no longer dating him. He's gay. So I go, what? So, okay. So it was a long time in my life before I finally knew anything about being gay. And very early in her life, she is able to use the phrase, the word, and knows a whole new vocabulary and understanding about what sex is and sexual identity, gender identity. And so then after that, the same girl, we were in a family situation, and she was dating a different guy, and it was getting pretty serious. So he was at this family situation, and overnight, he had stayed in the house with her, and there was no place to stay except for her bedroom. So here I am, the grandma, sitting downstairs waiting for them to come down, and they just casually walked down together, and I'm sitting there going, what? So evidently they had stayed together all night, and that was a very interesting introduction to me about the sexual mores of today. So yes, I have a granddaughter who is now, she's 22, I think, going almost 23. And I also have a grandson. And he's one that has kind of grown up with the technology. Every time I started to really worry about him because he spent so much time alone and in his room and just on his computer or on his phone. And now that he's in college, I worry about him even more because I think, you are studying too much. And would you please get out and do things with people? But no, he's in there studying and, doing everything. So those are my biggest experiences with college age kids. But then we also have UMBC students come to our senior living facility and campus, let's say campus. It's not a facility, it's a campus. If I were to ask if, are you good? I would say, yes, these kids are really good. But also I look at, I think about where I used to live, and I was involved with families there, and there were a lot of low-income people. And so I realized that even, there may be low-income people at UMBC, but the kids I knew in Baltimore really did not have opportunities. Even the education was, and the family life was, one parent or even no parents because grandparents were raising them. And it was just a very different thing. So you have to look at not just, oh, are you good? But you have to look at the whole picture of what the kid is facing. So, okay, that's enough for me.
Ellen, do you have anything to contribute?
Well, right now I'm very active in and I'll use the expression "no kings" movement because I think most people at least have heard that. But there's a lot of young people involved with that, and that's really been a wonderful experience, except for when it comes to the technology. Like they insist on communicating with signal, which I find extremely cumbersome. And then recently they've added proton mail, and then something else, which now I'm not remembering. Some other kind of, higher level of, security. And I always feel like telling them, because I was involved very much in the anti-war movement. And after a while, we started to realize that, half the people that were in the movement were working for the other side and, knew everything about us. And I kind of think that, we could, deepen our level of security. I agree with that. But like, I feel like they know. It isn't a big secret that we're having like 20 million people at a demonstration on Saturday. So that's, but it's been a joy to see young people become active again. Because for a long time, like when we demonstrated against the Iranian war and stuff, it was mostly older people. There weren't a lot of people joining the movement. And now a lot of people who clearly see their future is in danger. This is a real thing, are becoming activists. So that's the biggest part. I also have two, and I'm learning to say grandchildren, not granddaughters, because about 8 months ago, my grandchild, who is in college, told us that they wanted to be referred to as a they, them. And luckily for us, they were willing to have conversations about, did you always feel this way? Is this something that's happening now? Are you attracted to men? Are you attracted to women? have been very open about it and also very generous when we stumble over the pronouns and when we stumble over their name. And like when I ask too many questions, they'll go, Grandma, like that tone that young people use. And then the last thing was when I was a liaison at the School of Social Work, I got to work with young social work students in their graduate work while they were at their field placements. And the biggest thing I realized is, I mean, frankly, when I was in college, I didn't really care about grades. I mean, if I passed, that was good. But they are very concerned about grades. Like if they don't, and any of you are teachers stuff, you know, if they don't get an A, they fail. You know, they're very, very concerned about their grades and a little bit to the deficit of be concerned about what you're learning, not about what the grade is. But they maintain that the grade is the most important. You know, it's like on your permanent record, which for all young people, you're going to have a lot of crap on your permanent record. Don't worry about it.
I love that you kept it real, Ellen. I love that you kept it real.
Yes, because she knows what's on her permanent record.
I love that. Thank you for sharing both
No, you have
experiences professionally, personally, in your family life. That's really insightful. The next question that we have, what do you think are the biggest challenges faced by college-age adults today?
Mhm.
Happy for either one of you to start.
Mhm. Just in what I've been able to observe generally, I think the future looks pretty bleak for most kids. I'm not certain about that, but it just seems to me that with the climate thing and looming in front of them and the unavailability of jobs and money, that the future looks pretty hopeless for many kids. I'm not certain about that, but somebody can help me on that. It just, maybe you have more to say on that.
You know, I agree. I think the biggest things are what's coming down the road in our future, climate, the economy. I also think there's a big class difference for what people who, young people who are growing up with really good educations and a lot of privilege, I think are having an easier time than those kids who are not growing up with those benefits. The struggle for them is getting harder and harder. And, you know, and I think I think things politically are going to get a lot worse, but I am hopeful that they will at some point start getting better. But we have a lot of ground that we've lost and that young people have lost that we're going to have to pick up on.
That's fair. Yeah, did you have anything you wanted to add,
No,
Donna?
I did, but I've forgotten it.
No, that's okay. No worries. Okay, so the next question. How did you two get into activism? We kind of teased it a little bit with your bios, but I'd love to hear, and I'm sure our audience would love to hear, kind of what motivated you to get involved, what kind of stirred the activism bone in your body.
I think a lot of, for me, I know a lot for me was, it's just been a gradual process. Like I learned very early in my life that I didn't have to do what everybody else was doing. And it was simply because I sat with my grandma in church and she had polio. And so when people would stand, she would stay sitting. And I was helping her with her book, worship book. And would sit with her. Everybody else was standing. I thought, oh, this is pretty good. I don't have to do what everybody else is doing. So it was such a stupid, simple thing, but that started me on my journey. And then life experiences just kind of brought me into that. And the marriage equality movement was, well, then there were the 60s, but she's the 60s. She's the 60s queen. And listen, the first time I walked into her apartment, it was like walking into a 60s museum. Bob Dylan, Woodstock, everything, everywhere. And it was wonderful.
To go to your apartment. It
Yeah.
looks like a museum.
And I was just cat sitting. So,
I love that.
okay. So, then I got into marriage equality,
Mhm.
and that was my big thing. And then Hillary lost the election, and then that was my first big, really big planning a protest. I mean, I've been in so many protests, I can't even remember them. And then now on Saturday, we have this big one coming up.
Yeah.
And I've been organizing senior citizens so that they can go out and have a voice.
Mm.
And it's been, you do what you can do where you are and when you are. And so that's what I'm doing. Take it away.
No, I really like what
Take it away, Bob Dylan.
what Donna said about like the moment you realize you don't have to be like everyone else, and that may be a little hard for a while, but it feels a whole lot better when you realize that, you'll find your people. You will find your people, but and I think that's what happened to me. I grew up in a very privileged white community in New Jersey. Pretty much zero diversity, and then was introduced to a group that was trying to bridge a gap between kids in Harlem and kids that lived in suburbia in New Jersey. And that was just a mind blower for me, like meeting people of different cultures, like Black people, which I did not have in my young life at all. Like, what an awakening that was for me. And then, I think this happens to a lot of people. There's a moment, boom. I'm not going to be the same. And so when I left for college, I never came back. I mean, I was close to my parents. I came back to visit, but I never came back to live. I just started on my own path, which, the beginning of my political stuff was mainly cultural, being a hippie and all that. And that kind of morphed into the anti-war stuff. And then I think the biggest thing was the women's movement and realizing, wow, we've really been effed over for a long time. When I went to college, the girls had to be in at 11. When we were in high school, we weren't allowed to wear pants to school. Like if it was, I tell these stories to my grandkids and they go, "Oi." Like my grandmother used to tell me stories of escaping from Russia. And like now I tell them about how you had to wear pants underneath the skirt.
And you had to escape your dorm so you could get out. You had to sign in and out. Women had to sign in and out. Oh my, how
That's
terrible.
insane.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was an age you wouldn't believe.
So I mean, fighting for those rights, doing some civil rights work, it's defined my life.
It's powerful. I think that leads us into the next question. You talked a little bit about marriage equality. What are some of the big cultural changes that you've experienced in your lifetime? So thinking about the death or the assassination of MLK, Bobby Kennedy, Billie Jean King, right? Things like that. Do you recall any of those kind of big cultural moments and how that kind of maybe shaped you?
The first thing I remember really big was the killing of Kennedy's killing, because I was 14 And, it really was like, oh my God, our country is vulnerable. Things like this happen in our country as well. And up until then, I just didn't have that frame of, mind. And I was thinking about this when I was like reviewing these questions. And then I realized what a big impact COVID had on me. Having never experienced anything like that, how incredibly scary it was, and how it also pointed to like the whole, not only the danger about technology, but disease and germs and, all this stuff that you really didn't think that much about. That has really, I think, like the big moments, that was certainly one of them for me.
Yes, we certainly experienced all of those. And I think one of the big ones for me was Kent State.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That really was tough. That picture, that classic picture of the girl standing there,
Like kneeling down, yelling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
and I mean, you can't help but be affected by these things. But it's interesting to me that the things that are affecting people now are just maybe even more traumatic than the things we experience, because they're so out there more
Right, you see
readily.
them over and over and over.
You
and
see
over again,
them
like
constantly,
Minneapolis.
yes.
I mean,
And, back in, here's the thing about us. We are the last living witnesses of the digital, of the analog age. We are the last living witnesses of the analog age. Everything's now is digital. And that is a huge change. And I can definitely see it in my kids, my grandkids, and all of the people around us. So it's just, in a way, it's really points to the struggle is, I think, even harder. It's hard enough when you're in college just to find yourself, to know who you are, and to move ahead. And it's even harder when you don't see a future, too much of a future for yourself. I mean, I worried about my grandkids having a livable planet.
Yeah.
So, okay, we have to move to Mars. So, it's just tough.
It is tough. It is. And I think you guys touched a little bit about or on the fact that we have more in common than we realize. I mean, you mentioned Kent State, and yes, you were out of college when that happened, but that still resonated with you. You mentioned kind of like, at least in my thinking, each generation might see themselves as like having one moment in their life where like things change, where you realize, oh, the world is kind of ugly, or it has the capacity to be ugly, right? For me, it was the 9/11 attacks. I was 10, right? So like, I think each generation has that, but I think it really is important to know that we have more in common than we realize. Okay, so the next question, let's talk a little bit about friendships, relationships, etc. Do you find it difficult to connect more with folks as an older adult?
not really. I mean, there's one of the nice things about being an older adult is that you have a lot of long-term friendships. Like I have friends that I've been friends with for 50 years. Like that's a long time to have a friend. And so they're deep. The relationships are deep. You know each other, like I'll just tell you this one story. I'm still friends with somebody who grew up next door to me in New Jersey. And one day I was saying, remember when we were on the Howdy Doody show?
You were on that show?
Apparently we weren't, but I imagined that we were. So she was like, Ellen, we weren't on the Howdy Doody show. And so I realized, well, this is my proof that, like, I wanted her to, she's like, she knows more about my life than I know about my life. She remembered some things that, like, I didn't remember or whatever. But, I find relationships are always difficult. I mean, my husband died like 3 years ago. And so now meeting new people and seeing whether there's going to be another, love of my life or all that kind of stuff. And learning how to make new relationships and be respectful of people and, try to be patient with people and learn some of the life skills that you didn't have when you were 20 and you met your partner. I think has been, that's been good. But I think the biggest thing is, having long-term friends.
And one of the things that is really interesting to me is that I now have friends from high school, but it's because of the digital age. Because we got reacquainted because of Facebook. And so I know Facebook is, but that's where we got reacquainted. So we've been able to, talk about things in the past and what they're doing now, and it's just been fun. So, but I think it's interesting. I hope you don't think that just because we're old that we don't have relationships, because some of the best relationships that I've ever had have come in this time period for me. And it's a continuing thing. And I think friendships and relationships and being in community are something that are so important for people. And I think the digital age has really, I don't know, maybe it's being in community in a different way, but I think personal relationships and finding a supportive community are just so important. And I find them missing. I find a sense of being in a community missing with my grandchildren, and especially my grandson, who has it. It's not loneliness, I don't think. I think it's aloneness that is in his life so much. And I've been in the ministry for many years, and I know the church is declining like crazy, but it seems to me that if the church wanted to resurrect itself some way, it would resurrect in the way that the availability, that community, it brings an opportunity for people to be in community. And if it really wanted to market itself, that's what I would do.
Should put that on a campaign poster or something.
Yeah.
She at the helm, Donna. Learned a lot from you.
But I'm not there right now.
It's fair. Okay, I think we have 2 more questions. This is kind of a twofer. So we talked a little bit about having more in common with each other, older adults versus college age adults. What do you think college age adults can learn from older adults? And what might older adults learn from college age adults?
Well, I feel the biggest thing that I've learned from being around young people is the thing around gender fluidity. I mean, that has been a really hard thing to understand. And I find myself like wanting to know, like, is that a boy, a man, or a woman? And, young people say, it doesn't matter. And I'm like, I know it doesn't matter. I know it doesn't matter, but like,
I just want to know.
no, you know. So really trying to struggle about new thinking. It's
Right.
hard.
Mm.
It's really, really hard.
Mhm.
And I think that that's the, you know, to like you fall in love with a person. That's it. You know, it's not more complicated than that. And I think so that's the most important thing. Also, I think that there is an ease with technology. They're not so, you know, their brains are open to learning, you know, and not being afraid of the technology. And I think that, you know, sometimes I know I'm afraid to push that button because I don't know what it's going to do. You know, all of that kind of stuff. But I feel like I'm learning a lot from them by working with them, a lot from them by working with them. And, you know, I hope they're learning a little bit something from the older people that are involved too. And I think what they learn from us is a little bit of patience.
And I think they can learn from us that we made big mistakes. Our generation made big mistakes, especially in regard to climate. And we have a lot of making up to do. So once I get over all this protesting stuff, I'm going to go back to climate, which was my major goal. I always set goals for myself. And that's the thing I hope, you know, I know all seniors don't do this, but it's what I do. I set goals for myself, and that's what I work on. I had to let climate go a little bit because all this other shit happened. And and I knew I could only do one thing. So we have to really, I hope kids can learn from us that it's okay. First of all, you need to keep on learning. Do not stop learning just because you graduate. Life goes on, and believe me, the older you get, the less you know. You realize you know less and less.
Stay curious.
Yes. So, I also think that college-age students can learn that seniors can still be useful in society. Just because you're old does not mean you're not useful. And I mean, look, we both are doing so much. And we met because our spouses were in, each had their own special illness. And we were in a support group together. And after that, we got to know each other, not digitally, but interpersonally. And then we taught a class called "You're Never Too Old to Be an Activist." So that's what we're doing, isn't it?
Okay, I'll just tell you this little anecdote. At our first activism was before before COVID, at the place where we lived, Charlestown, you could bring a banana home after a meal. You know, like there were bananas you could bring home, and during COVID they stopped, you know, the bananas. So
Point of contention.
good example of activism. So it was like, bring back the banana.
You made your own protests.
Yeah.
Saw a need and
We
made
did.
plans. I love that.
We saw a need and filled it.
There we go. I do want to move on to this last kind of tidbit. So we went over kind of learning things from different generations. But if there's one piece of advice or maybe words of wisdom that you could share with young people today in 2026, what would that be?
You know what? See, Shakespeare taught us in Julius Caesar, this above all, to thine own self be true, and it shall follow as the night the day, that thou canst not then be false to any man. So know yourself. It's a lifelong experience, but find that solid place where you are and live it. And I think the other thing is slow down and enjoy life. I mean, really, life is here for us. And I say that as a privileged person, and we are all privileged people who sit here. And there are people who cannot do that. I keep reminding us of that. But slow down and enjoy life.
That's great. Anything, Ellen?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with what Donna said. I think one of the things that I've learned most in my life is that you just can't control everything. You have to let go. Just because you want something doesn't mean it's going to happen. Just because you don't want something to not happen, you've got to be able to deal with the ebbs and flows of the world and your life. Because otherwise you'll have a worry bag, this big that you're always filling. And that's a lot to carry around in your life.
Well, that was our last question. Please join me in giving it up for our panelists one last time. Thank you so much for being here today. Before our short break, we wanted to plug our reading list. And I would like to thank my colleague, Joe Lee. I'm going to give the mic to Joe, who will be talking about the reading list and our special borrowers.
Thank you, Jasmine. And thank you so much again to our speakers for such a profound and informational panel. Thank you. So this reading list was actually created by our wonderful librarian and head of reference, Katie Sullivan, as well as the student panelists who I believe will be joining us later. But if you wanted to know more about the topics that were mentioned today and about sort of the generational themes discussed, we have a wide variety of books, ebooks, as well as DVDs that can be available either to check out or view online for streaming. And if you're not part of the UMBC communities, no worries. We do have a special borrowers borrowing application that we have available on the display. We changed it this year to be no fee. So it is completely free. All you have to do is just fill out the form and bring a valid form of photo ID and bring it up to the front desk after you're finished, and you can grab a card and start checking out materials. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Joe. So we do have our second panel of the day scheduled for 11. So feel free to take a break. We've got snacks, refreshments, and we will see you again at 11. Thanks, everyone.
I learned I mean, it's just so wonderful. These are I love what you said, that just because now there doesn't, you're useless, so a lot of people retire. Even though this. Right, and then it's all these mental health impact. Right. He was a friend of mine, which is this, also a friend of somebody. Well, I actually. There was in my Yeah. It's like in our blood. I do. Why did you feel that? My parents, they don't. Like I'm trying to figure out, like, yes. I think I will, but. So much. And you're good. All very or we and it's like talk about it greatly. That's all that have to do
I was looking at the availability for this guy's appointments and I said, 11 a.m. I would say, I'm like,
yeah. All day. Oh, okay. I'm going to be there Saturday. Oh. 3 hours on Wednesday night. Ah. I teach it. I love it. My students love it because it's their first time getting that. They're saying, but I'm not.
How are you? Tuesday, I don't know if he's at Instagram. It's horrible. My head's again with it. I look at TikTok. I put it down and I'm like too stimulating. Yeah, it's too much of a rush. I need the slowness of a page. I feel like a long action movie or something like that. No, action movie. Thank you. And my music is absolutely horrendous in my fellow. It seems like I don't even Thanks for the days. Yeah, I understand. Thank you. But yeah, there's some bad things. So, this is Joe and right, okay. I can start pretty fun because I like to Joe the thing.
Yeah.
See, like, hi, my name is Roy. What's your name?
I brought dinner.
You reveal that. Tired. I'm studying under So I am finding
Do you have a
Thank you. At least about 6 people. That's great too. So we don't get there. There's going to be based in that house. It's a big picture. This is nice.
Dating bias, what about you? What about being here?
So excited. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, we just have to turn our direction that need to go. Yes, I'm scared. That's not adults. Yeah. It's amazing.
Did you meet? Yeah. Well,
Yeah. Hey, is that what you got on there?
Sorry, I know you. And you said this.
No, when I was in AC, it's like goodbye. When I was speaking.
Oh, yeah, that's actually.
And then he's back, and then we went back to the fire. It's like I would throw like matches on the bill.
I've never been the same.
You're working. You're right. That I kept the call. Oh, so we do need to. I'm so good at this. Listen, there they seem. Okay, so you should. Like. Streaming Yes. First time. And over the years, every time we don't mess. But we tax me. Say that's about. Clever words. My friend pleasure for all the time. I mean, but I do why it's interesting. He's so loud. Yeah, right. It's not hurt. Yeah. That's the child. Student for a man. They don't have social security. But yeah. Don't. Yeah. Actually, don't please. I can't think of words. Yeah, it's not like and they like play. I said I was thinking not no. No, but I felt they better than breaking that. It's like sitting on a set like here. They hold with me to gas station. No, it's not very. Oh, it's just like that's what I'm hearing. Yeah. Like I'm sorry. So. It's not gonna impact my study.
Okay, in the interest of time, we're going to move into our next panel. I have the mic, but Dr. Kate is in charge, so. Okay, thank you all for being here. I hope you enjoyed your break. We're moving on to our next panel titled Being Young in America, a panel discussion with UMBC students, which will be led by Katie Sullivan, who serves as head of reference and instruction at our library and gallery. In this role, she manages research support services, library instruction, and the subject librarian cohort. She serves as subject librarian for the Erickson School Aging Studies, the School of Social Work, and a number of departments within the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences. Her research interests include mentoring, hiring and retention, and critical information literacy. So we're going to let you take it away, and you're going to introduce your fellow panelists.
Thank you, Joanna. Welcome, everybody. It's great to be here with you. I'm thrilled to introduce our student panelists here, Joey Hoffman, Nyande Marangi, and Maria Bryan. So for all of you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your life at UMBC? Did,
You can hold it down.
no.
Thank you so much. Hello. So my name's Maria. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a first generation student here at UMBC. I'm a double major, computer science and philosophy, and I'm also on the accelerated master's program. Some of my involvement on campus includes CWIT, the Center for Women in Technology. I'm a scholar. I'm also the treasurer of a club, AIAA, the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, and I work in the serials department in the library. More insight into my perspective as a UMBC student. I live on campus, and I've lived on campus all 3 years so far. I am a junior, and I've lived in Catonsville all my life, so I don't really want to leave. I like it a lot. Some of my hobbies include crochet. I love crochet. Painting my nails, which I do every 3 days. Love painting my nails. And I love watching movies with friends.
Bye.
Hey, how y'all doing? I'm Nyande. I am also a junior here at UMBC. I'm a double major in the Modern Languages and Linguistics program. I'm on the Applied Linguistics track, and I'm also studying philosophy. I'm from Silver Spring, Maryland. I'm a first generation American, so my family is originally from Namibia and Egypt. Outside of school, let's say I'm a server. I'm big into music. I drive a 2008 Volvo, so I'm working on my CD collection at the moment. And I also love watching movies with my friends. Yeah, glad to be here.
Hi everyone, I'm Joey. My pronouns are he, him. I am a junior here. I'm a theater studies major and a critical sexualities minor. I was born and raised in Catonsville, similarly to Maria. I am a queer trans man. I work as a student recruiter for the theater department, and I am an events coordinator for the Theater Honor Society. I've lived on campus since my freshman year, and that has been really helpful for finding friends and just kind of making a home here on campus. And outside of school, I love hanging out with friends. I love crafting. I love reading. I love horror movies, and I love animals. Thank you.
All right. So could you describe your journey and understanding and integrating your various identities that you've explained to us?
So one of the identities that I don't think I mentioned is that I'm Latina. My mom is from Guatemala. I'm a first generation American on her side. My dad is American and from Catonsville, or no, actually from Maryland. Sorry about that. So I've been kind of having trouble like navigating those identities and putting them together because at times they seem to almost go against each other, like especially in like these times right now. And my dad being Republican, and sorry, I won't get into that too much, but so like that has been something that I do struggle with, finding like the balance between the two. And I'm also queer and I have a boyfriend, which is also something that I'm trying to navigate because they also seem like two opposite things. But yeah, trying to understand that.
So for me personally, I feel like I've experienced a lot of privilege in the spaces that I grew up in. I'm from Silver Spring, which is a very ethnically diverse area. It's also very like socially progressive, and so all of the schools that I went to growing up did have spaces for me where I could explore different parts of my identities. So I always went to Black student affinity groups. There were first generation American specific sort of support groups. There were queer groups that I went to. But something that I would experience there is a lot of the time I felt like being a part of one community sort of would come at the cost of another. And so a lot of the time, it almost put me in a position where I would have to prioritize one aspect of my identity. The other thing is that I come from an immigrant family, and the majority of my extended family, both in the United States and outside of it, is not very accepting of that part of my identity. And something that I think is really difficult to navigate is sort of seeing how your different communities discuss each other. And that was a very difficult thing, I think, for me to internalize growing up, especially. I think now, I'm a little older, I have some more perspective. But especially as a child and as a young adult, I think that was just a very difficult thing for me to sort of understand and process.
For me, I feel like I struggled a lot when it came to balancing my identity as a man, a trans man, and a queer man. I feel like it takes a lot of time and growth to really understand yourself enough to allow all of your identities to coexist. Growing up, I felt like the hardest part when it came to understanding myself was being able to balance my urge to pass as a man and the need to present myself in ways that made me happy, even if that wasn't as masculine as I wanted. I tried to present myself hyper masculine because I believed it was the only way my identity could ever be respected and seen. So as I grew up, I inevitably met more queer folk, and I realized I needed to prioritize what felt right for me rather than what made other people comfortable or understanding of my identity. I was tired of wearing button-ups and khakis. Um, I learned so much about myself through simply like feeling, or I guess learning what felt right in my body and for my body. Being queer and a trans man has given me outlets to represent myself in ways I hadn't imagined I could ever do. So that's really awesome.
Thank you. So processing and supporting an LGBTQ plus family member can sometimes take time. What, in your experience, can help families navigate through this process?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for my perspective and for my family especially, the biggest thing was just through the lens of education. And sort of we prioritized expanding the idea of queerness beyond a sort of preconceived notion. And so our family went together to queer events. We consumed a lot of queer media together and sort of media that challenged the traditional idea of what it means to be queer. So like my dad is a big like Luther Vandross fan. And so we talked a lot about sort of what that meant for him to be a queer Black man, especially at a time where you couldn't really be a queer Black man. We watched Moonlight together as a family. That's a beautiful film. And then going back to the last question a little bit, I think in my experience, a lot of queer kids of color, they sort of hear things like, we don't do that, or that's not us. And so the most important thing was just showing them the opposite and showing them examples of, those are my keys, of queer people who do look like us, and sort of understanding queerness beyond maybe the monolith that a lot of my family had in their head. That was the biggest thing for us.
Mhm. I feel like, on the other hand, also just prioritizing relationships with your queer loved ones, listening, being patient with your queer loved one, your child, whatever, accepting that it's okay for you not to have all the answers, being okay with having awkward or uncomfortable conversations, and being okay with like the discomfort and ambiguity between you and your child or queer loved one. But also just being okay with having uncomfortable conversations with other people, if that makes sense. And it's really okay not to have all the answers because you won't. I think it's also important to meet other queer people. For example, after I came out as trans, I know what helped my mother a lot was working with family support groups like PFLAG. This is an organization that works with both queer kids and parents of queer kids. And through PFLAG, she was able to meet other families in the same boat as her. And through this, she could see families with thriving queer and trans kids. And I think in a way, she was able to see a positive future for me, which had a big influence.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So, how do families benefit from supporting their queer children?
Families definitely benefit by having a healthy communication between their queer like family member and like themselves. So you're able to see the family member for like who they truly are. They don't have to hide their identities, which is really important if you want a like actual healthy like connection with the family member. And you can also understand like maybe like their actions or like how they are as a person overall. Just having that deeper level of understanding. It also is a great way to see your family member as their own person and they're like able to make decisions on their own that you might not agree with, but this will ultimately happen in one way or another. So just kind of understanding that like you do have to come to terms with that if you want to have a good connection with your family member is really important. Um, and like just like that authentic connection is amazing. And it really is a gift for someone to come out to you and to feel comfortable enough to do that with you. I think shows how much of a trusted person you are. So I think that that shouldn't be something that is taken lightly.
Thank you. And I'll just add, as a parent, I think that you realize that you can learn and grow and change in really meaningful ways, and going on that journey with your child. Wonderful, thank you. So sometimes, as we know, young people don't have the support of their family members. Can you describe the concept of chosen family as it relates to young people?
Chosen family, in my experience, have been friends that support your identity and like your true self. So that means not just taking a part of who you are and like kind of like putting your own view of like who that person is, kind of like referring to the last question, like fully understanding who that person is. So usually what I've seen as a chosen family would be like friends that support the person, queer adults, accepting adults. And to be like a chosen family is so um it's also a gift. Like it's so beautiful for someone to be able to like do this and to feel so comfortable with you that like they consider you like their family. That I don't know, like it it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. Um but you can like be a chosen like or like part of a chosen family for other people by just like being an understanding person and just like having that upfrontness of I am a person that you can talk to. I am a like comfortable, like comforting person to be around. Someone that like people can open up to you. Um, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Adding on, so I would say, definition wise, right? A chosen family is something that I think really everybody has, whether or not they're queer. But in my own experience, it's something that really comes about in a scenario where one's own, blood related family might not be a space that's safe for them to live fully in their identity. And of course, every person needs community. Every marginalized person needs community. And however accepting that someone's family is, they might not be able to sort of completely understand everything that comes with being a queer person, especially being a queer person today. And for me, that aspect of my identity was sort of the first part of me that didn't really come with a built-in community. So, I've been a woman in America for 20 years, and I have a whole host of sisters, and I've been a Black person in America for 20 years, and my whole family's Black, right? And so it's different. You don't have those built-in supports to help you navigate through how truly difficult being a queer person in America can be. And I was lucky enough to have access to queer groups in school. I was able to sort of connect with people who had previously gone through the things that I was going through, or who were, I got to go through those things with them together. And another beautiful part about it was I was also able to sort of help some people who were younger than me who were going through those things. And so I think that it's just one of the most important things in the world to have people who love you is very important, but I also think it's equally as important and maybe kind of sometimes understated to also have people who understand you.
That was so good. So I have the privilege to say I've always had friends and family that have accepted, uplifted, and listened to me as a trans person. But growing up, most, if not all of these people were cisgender, and being trans, I often felt like a black sheep. And because of this, it was harder for me to feel fully understood and seen, and that definitely took a toll on my mental health. And I felt very alone at times, even though I was surrounded by support. I think my example of a chosen family would come from my college roommates. We were paired together freshman year on a whim, and we had never met each other, but we all happened to be trans. And it felt like, honestly, the most beautiful thing to be living with three trans people. I like how we've all used the word beautiful here. That's really symbolic. And there was just this kind of immediate bond we all experienced, and I've never known anything like it. There was just this constant comfort, and I think that really goes to show that having a chosen family can be so extremely sacred and special. Um, Shameless plug, but there's a great example of chosen family on our resource list curated for the symposium. There is a movie called Paris is Burning, and I would suggest that you watch it. It is available through public libraries and streaming services, and it is about ballroom culture and drag queens and queer people that didn't have family and found family in New York City. It's really beautiful, and I love that movie.
We've touched on some of these things already, but I think there's more to say, and particularly since this is a lot of generations represented today, what are meaningful ways to support queer young people?
I think that one of the most important things that you can do is not wait until someone comes out to you in order to be motivated to support young queer people. So just having that drive to learn more about things that you might not like fully understand, or maybe like don't fully agree with, and then like trying to like see like what does that mean, and if someone does come out to you, like how do you handle that, and being proactive in that sense. So just like trying to learn more about marginalized communities, the struggles that they go through, listening to like the media, like Joey said, and also Nyande, and attend events like this, honestly, to learn about like experiences that other queer folk have been through. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you guys already got step one. Just by being here is really fantastic, because I think that, in my opinion, one of the most meaningful ways to support marginalized young people, or marginalized any people, is by listening to them, and especially by believing them. I think that it's true for any experience, but nobody has lived that life except for them. And so, going back to the thing about chosen family, listening and trying your very best to understand their perspective, and just see them for who they are and for what they're going through. And then I think make yourself comfortable with the uncomfortable, and sort of sit in the unfamiliar, and learn from that.
100%. And also, just after someone comes out to you, I think it's really important to remember that they are still the same person as before. And because of this, I think it's also really important to focus on just like simply existing with queer loved ones without focusing like constantly on their identity, if that makes sense. It helps to normalize simply living as a queer person and doing everyday things as a queer person. Go out for ice cream, like go see a movie with your queer loved one. Like simply existing together can be so extremely meaningful for queer folk. And also remembering to follow their lead. They're driving the bus, and it's important to allow them to work at their own pace, even if that is a pace that maybe you don't like. At the end of the day, it isn't about you. And you have, yeah, it feels kind of selfish to say, but like sometimes we just need to take a step back and let them do what they need to do. Yeah.
So you're all set to graduate in 2027. Congratulations. As you move forward, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling a little nervous about it. I've been very lucky to have attended a university that is so welcoming and accepting and has so many resources and opportunities for queer students and students of like all genders and like race and like it's like the diversity here has been so amazing. And I'm nervous for entering a workforce that is known to be dominated by men, specifically white men, and knowing that I won't have the ability to look around me and see people that have like, people that I can relate to in that way. So that is something that is nerve-wracking for me. And also, like, of course, like with the legislation and everything that's going on right now, I'm nervous about like my family members being deported. So that's just like, I don't know. We'll see. Something that I am looking forward to though is being out on my own and being able to participate more in these communities that aren't in this bubble that is the university. So I can make more of an effort to go and support like queer communities that don't just happen to fall in my lap because I live on a university, yeah.
I mean, I definitely share some of the same worries as you. I do come from a very diverse place. UMBC is a very diverse campus. And I have had a lot of privilege in always having at least my foot in some sort of an accepting space. And so I think there's a lot of uncertainty that comes with graduating college, obviously, but I think, I'm very excited, to be an adult, to sort of, I think, lead my own life sort of for the first time, participate in more opportunities like this. Because I mean, obviously, learning never stops, right? And so that's something that I'm really excited about, is to be able to keep learning and exploring myself. And I think that, yeah, I am really looking forward to what comes next. I think that UMBC has equipped me with a lot of good knowledge that'll be useful for going out into the world.
Yeah, like you guys, I feel pretty anxious, but I would say also like you guys, I feel very delighted and determined. We are all living in a very strange timeline, and I have no idea what the world has in store for me. But I do know I have worked immensely hard to be here, and I will continue working just as hard. I'm planning to pursue a doctorate in performance studies, and this path I plan to take is somewhat frightening, but also very exhilarating. I am so deeply in love with theater, and it has had such a special place in my heart, and I look forward to continuing my work with theater. And I think everyone, but I think especially young people, really need to remember that we need to be kind to ourselves, and it's extremely necessary to remember our worth and how important we are. And sometimes we just need to like take a step back and give ourselves a pat on the back because we deserve it. Yeah.
Thank you. We were so worried about going overtime that we went under time. But I think that gives us, first of all, I'd like to thank you all very much for sharing and preparing in the way that you did for today. But we have lots of time for questions, and we've got people online, and we've got people in the room here. I don't know. Okay.
Thank you so much. All of the presentations today have been fantastic, and you remind me why UMBC is such a special place. I was wondering, in the last panel, they were asked questions about, how do you connect or know young people today? What are your interactions? I was just curious if there have been experiences or relationships that you've had with queer elders or just older generations more generally that have helped you, inspired you, or caused points of conflict? Just sort of that intergenerational aspect.
As a theater major, like all of our professors are queer, and it is genuinely the best thing in the world. And before I got to UMBC, I didn't really know like older queer people. But now like every class I go to, it's just like, hey, you know me, I know you, and we get each other. So that has been a really lovely experience, and I think it's made learning so much more exciting and easy for me because I mean, I'm around these queer professors constantly, and it has made theater feel like such a safe space, even though that's kind of like feels inherent a little bit. Theater's always going to kind of be a safe space for me. So, yeah.
For me, so I'm not in theater and I'm unfortunately not surrounded by older queer folk. So the ways that I usually meet older queer folk or older like people in general is just like by talking. I'll like be out in public and I just love like to talk to like people that I like come across. So I think like just like being like an inviting person in that sense and like maybe like trying to start conversations is such like some of my like most memorable like conversations or like things that have like made my day have just been like in passing like talking to people. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your question. I'm actually very grateful that you asked because it was something that I didn't really get to. It just wasn't really the direction that our panel specifically was going in. But about, I would say, 10, 15 years ago now, my mother, she came out to us as a lesbian, and she had been married to my father for 15 years before, and they had been divorced for a couple of years, and so I've gotten to see her sort of go through all of the struggles with my identity that I was going through when I was maybe in late elementary school, early middle school, when she was in her late 40s. And so it's not even so much my experiences with older queer people. I mean, I've had a couple through her community, but she's sort of had the opportunity to connect with people who are her age. And she's done that. She goes to she's in a queer book club. And so I've sort of gotten to interact with some of the older members of my community through that, but it's also just been I mean, I was talking earlier about how queerness isn't a monolith, and not everybody understands their identity when they're 15, especially people who are in the older generation who don't who don't have the privilege of seeing it around them as much in that younger age. And so that's been my big experience, and it's been a really wonderful one.
Excuse me.
This has been really great. I really thank the three of you for sharing all your experiences. I'm wondering, what are the things that you're most worried about?
Um, I'm worried about finding a job. That's like one of my biggest worries. I'm worried about like finding a place in the world, really. And like I know that I'm not done growing and like fully understanding my identity. And I have kind of come to terms with the fact that like I might never fully understand my identity. So kind of I worry in like finding those groups that will support me outside of college. I've been blessed with such an amazing roommate group and like friends on campus, and I'm like worried about losing them. So like especially after college ends and they're not forced to live with me anymore and spend time with me, I'm worried about that. So I think those are some of my biggest worries.
Also worried about finding a job. Paying for rent. But I would also say I am worried about my trans brothers and sisters and in between. And am worried about their safety. I'm really so grateful to be living in Maryland, but there are so many trans folk that don't live in Maryland and they don't have the same privileges as me. And I hate looking at the news. I hate social media because I feel like it's just so depressing and I am so worried about my trans peers. Yeah.
It's a Pandora's box. I'm worried about a lot of things. I would say I'm also worried about finding a job, especially in the time of AI. I was curious about working in natural language processing, but I would say number one right now. I have a whole huge family of immigrants in the United States. My younger brothers weren't born in this country. My stepmother wasn't born in this country. My father wasn't born in this country. That's been number one for me, especially. There's been a lot of immigration legislation going around, and there's also been immigration control in schools in Montgomery County. And I'm sure in other counties as well. That's just the one where I live and where I see it. But I think I'm also worried. I think I'm worried that we're sort of moving in a backwards direction as a country. And I think that when I was growing up, it was a very hopeful time for queer people. I remember I was in I actually remember exactly where I was. I was in my grandfather's house in Kansas when gay marriage became illegal in the United States and became a right in 2014. And I mean, I remember seeing Obama getting reelected, and I remember feeling like I was in a much safer place, which I think a lot of the time people don't. It's, I think, sort of a little bit rare to see a regression like this. And I think that I'm worried that it's going to amplify.
Other questions?
It's really wonderful to hear from young people, both here and a number of students have come to speak at Charlestown, which has just been great. I'm co-chair of two gay groups, LGBTQ groups at Charlestown. We have a Monday night dinner group, which every week we gather for dinner. The group is about half LGBTQ and about half allies, which has been really, really wonderful, the interaction and exchanges. Our other group is more of a PFLAG type group. We've just had a turnover in leadership of that group, and we've just put together a plan for the next year. We're going to be doing all kinds of exciting things, field trips, and taking people to drag bingo, which is actually being sponsored by the Baltimore County government this year, which blows my mind. I grew up in Howard County, and I lived in a LGBTQ welcoming commune called the Peer Collective, which was very active in Howard County back in the late 60s and early 70s. We ran a coffee house every Friday and Saturday night at the other barn. We published a quarterly newspaper, which was distributed in local high schools, much to the dismay of the powers that be. And also was co-founder of a group in Howard County called Gay People Columbia that we actually passed in Howard County, the first gay rights bill in a county in the United States. We were followed by other counties here in Maryland, and ultimately the state laws and obviously the federal laws you've just referred to. But it's wonderful to kind of look back at some of the things that we were engaged in now and see people that are, working on the same journey. I also was the first person to take my boyfriend to my prom in Howard County, which made the Washington Post, the Baltimore Sun, and WJZ. So it was interesting. Anyway.
You are amazing.
That is amazing.
Thank you for your work. And thank you for being here.
Hi, I'm Dr. Kate. I teach here, and I became a lesbian in 1994 when I was in college, and I learned that that girls could like girls. I didn't know that was a thing. And then I found out and it was amazing. And I remember when I was graduating, my biggest fear was that I wouldn't be able to keep being gay, that I wouldn't find those spaces. And just a couple of your remarks made me think about that. And what I discovered was that, man, it's just like great being gay the whole time. Like, it's not like I was surrounded by gay people the second I graduated, but I mean, yeah, I was. Yeah, sorry. I've just lived basically a gay only lifestyle for most of my life. And other queer people. I've married a bisexual woman who's still bisexual, even though she married a woman, just for those who don't understand that. So I guess this is more of a comment than a question, but what I have found is that that things are going to be okay, right? Like the fears, like I had a lot of fears. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a place to live. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know if I could be gay. And look at me now, right? So it's sort of like I think a lot of times when we talk to graduating seniors, it's like, what are you anxious about or scared about? But also like, you all shared like what you're excited about. And I'm so excited for y'all. It's like, it's so cool to get to be gay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else?
And I'll just add to that. So Joey's my son, and 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 I'll just say I should be very concerned about his journey because that it's maybe not the most lucrative, obvious journey, but for me, and I'll just say this as a parent, maybe for the two of you, knowing that you know who you are and you are passionate about what you want to do makes me feel not worried for you. And so I'll just say that, like to see the students here on campus, I see them really getting into something that they love and they're passionate about and seeing themselves authentically for who they are, I feel like they're going to be okay. It may not be the smoothest journey because of factors you can't control, but that's where you want to be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions or comments? Danielle and the panel are still here too, if you want to ask them a question.
Danielle. Danielle, can I ask you a quick question? Hi, I'm Kate. I teach here. So I've had a number of students talk to me in classes about being stalked online, even by people they don't know, because Instagram shares your location unless you turn it off, or like those kinds of things. And they've expressed to me that they're finding trouble getting support unless something quote happens. There's like nothing that seems to be done about it. And is there something that like institutionally that like our Equity and Civil Rights Office could be doing about stalking? Because that's the thing I'm hearing about a lot in my classes these days. So I took it down a notch from everything's going to be great.
Oh, thank you, Kate. It's akin to a lot of the behaviors that I was talking about, that they just fall short of this threshold of things that we consider hurtful and harmful. And that's not just like socially, that's also like in the law and the judicial system, right? We need some evidence of harm for something to be considered something we have to stop and do something about. And so I think we have to take it into our own hands to educate ourselves on what are the resources out there, like just having a pool of what can somebody actually do, and having it be readily available, and doing the hard legwork before the student comes to us and saying, yeah, that's terrible. And I know that there's not much that you feel you can do. Here are the 5 things that we know that you can do to help protect yourself. And here are also resources that, to help you to cope and navigate this. I think like number 1 is just having that awareness that this is something that there are not a lot of resources for, and doing what we can to fill the gap, and having something practical, having something that we can do in that moment. Like, what steps are you taking right now to keep yourself safe? And are you missing some that I know about because I've done the legwork already, or somebody in our office has done that, you know? So I think having really practical steps that someone could take right in that moment while they're talking to you is the best thing we can have prepared. And then, you know, just validating and believing, right?
Sorry, quick pivot back to the panel. I'm Lorraine. I'm an archivist here in Special Collections in AOK Library Gallery. I'm also a first generation lesbian. Haha. And in my own experience, I've always struggled with kind of the balance between being first gen. My father's Nigerian, my mother's Trinidadian, and also being like put in the middle of the United States from New Jersey. Not in the middle, but put in the United States. And then also kind of navigating through my own identity. I'm curious about what your experience is, whatever you're willing to share, of course, has been for actually navigating what it means to kind of shift between the American culture, the cultural background within your own family, and your queerness.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like we have a very similar experience. My father's from Namibia, and my mother, she was born in Kansas, but her parents are Egyptian, and it's been very difficult for me to navigate. If I'm just speaking candidly, I think a lot of the time, first generation Americans, they hear so much about the struggle that their parents went through. I heard so much. I mean, my parents have done some incredibly tremendous things to give me the opportunity to be sitting here in front of you, to drive my own car to school every day, to come to university every day. And they've made some really beautiful sacrifices for me. And I think a lot of the time that sort of comes with then a background of, obviously I need to be grateful, but in some level, I think there's sort of an idea of, well, what struggle have I gone through, right? In my beautiful, cushy American Silver Spring life, right? And I think that's been sort of one of the toughest things to process in my relationship with my father specifically. But I also, again, have the privilege, me and my dad have done a lot of work together on sort of understanding who I am, and understanding who he is now as a father, as a parent of a queer person. But I would honestly say that, well, one, thank you for sort of highlighting that question. It's a very important one, and I think it's one that is very difficult for people to talk about, because because of all the background that comes with it, and all of the difficulty. But I think that there are two very beautiful parts of my identity that I'm very, very proud to have. And I think that I'm honestly even privileged to be able to get to have the opportunity to struggle through understanding those two parts of myself. And I think that that having people, whether they're in your family or your blood family, or whether they're outside of them, who are willing to sort of work through that struggle with you, I think that's sort of all I can ask for.
I think in my case, it's very different. My dad was actually my dad's white, and he wanted me to be a lesbian growing up. So he was like, I'm gonna get you combat boots and Doc Martens, and like you should wear flannels and stuff. Yeah, that's the only thing, right? But my mom did not know about this agenda to try to turn me gay. I don't know. Jokes, of course. Sorry. But my mom she's from Guatemala. She is extremely Catholic, and I cannot imagine a world in which I ever come out to her. And this is the same for like my entire family on my mom's side. And I feel like this like might kind of go against like what we've been saying here the entire time. But from what I've seen from my side of the family and like what I've experienced, like I'll bring up like queer topics and immediately shut down and met with just straight homophobia, like really bad. And if I'm like talking about someone else in this way, like what will happen if I like come out and I say like, oh, like I am having these feelings. Um, so I've just really been discouraged to like share my side, like that side of myself with my family. Um, yeah, and it's kind of like led me to have a different point of view on like coming out in general, because I'm like afraid of like the backlash that I'll face like if my family like ever finds out. So I like haven't said anything to my dad, even though he would like freak out. He would be so happy, you know. But yeah, like just like the thought of like my parents finding out or like my mom specifically and that side of my family finding out is like crazy. I don't know. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Never mind.
Thank you all for sharing. Thank you so much. So I'm going to go ahead and start introducing our next panel while we switch the table participants. So we might need a few more chairs.
Come here for our panel. See, I'll make way for you here. That's cool. Hey, we don't have to worry about enough seats. No.
Okay, as we move into our last panel of the symposium, I definitely want to thank everyone again and again, both for your participation as an audience and attendees and speakers. Thank you all so much for being here.
Hold on a second. What? So I don't think we'll grab them. Okay.
And my other note before I introduce our last panel is that there's an evaluation form that the print copy is already on the other side of the muffins with some golf pencils. If you want to fill that out before you leave today, and you can turn it into one of us. We'll also put up a QR code and a link so that folks can fill out the online form. So we would appreciate hearing your thoughts about the day. Just a few short questions. Again, we have a print form here, and we'll put up a link for the online form. And now I'm pleased to introduce our last panel, the title of which is Disability and Accessibility at UMBC, Student and Faculty Perspectives. Our facilitator is Dr. Kate Drabinski, who has already made herself known in the room, but I will certainly be thrilled to read her formal bio. Dr. Kate Drabinski is a teaching professor in gender, women's, and sexuality studies, as well as director of the Humanities Scholars Program and associate director of the WIL program. She is faculty advisor for the Disability Advocacy Union, a member of the Critical Disability Studies Minor Committee, as well as the Faculty Working Group. And for today's panel, she is joined by several UMBC students who will now have the opportunity to introduce themselves.
Hi, thanks everybody for coming. When Joe Gadsby reached out to me and said maybe you could do a panel about young people and disability, I was like, oh, I wonder if I know anybody who'd want to talk about that. And I am going to do very little talking because I feel like disability, and now here I go talking, disability is an issue on campus. Those of us who work here know that making our courses accessible, following rules, that when we get those letters of accommodation and things like that. But what I very rarely hear is what students want and need and what their blocks are. I hear it a lot in my classes because I teach disability studies in a number of my courses, but Yeah, so let's hear from students. So I want to go down the line, and could you tell us your name, your pronouns if you'd like to share them, your major, and then something that, and I didn't tell you this in advance, so if you don't have anything, that's fine, but why you care about this issue.
So, hi everyone. My name is Forrest Gross. My pronouns are they, them. I'm a sociology major and a critical disability studies minor. And this means so much to me, not just because it impacts me in my daily life as a wheelchair user, but I see other people struggling with it and I try to raise my voice about it, but it sounds like I'm talking on deaf ears a lot of the time. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Key Gallagher. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am an English major in the communication and technology track, which is now called something else, I believe, but I'm also a critical disability studies minor, not to flex, but I am going to be one of the first people to graduate with it this coming semester, so woo, yeah. See me in May. Anyways, I am a cane user and disability studies matters to me because growing up, I did not know really the extent of what disability was, and the advocacy that I have started to do and that the people around me have done has opened my eyes, and I'm hoping to open other people's eyes.
Hello, my name is Emma, and I use they them pronouns. I am majoring in psychology, minoring in social work. I use they them pronouns. Accessibility matters to me because I I am disabled and have experienced firsthand how hard just existing can get without the right support. I was diagnosed with ADHD at 6 years old, autism spectrum disorder at 19 years old, depression at 20 years old, and I just got my PTSD diagnosis this year in February.
Hello, everyone. My name is Irene. I'm a computer science major and a gender women's studies minor. um, accessibility matters to me because I have a loved one who I've seen face accessibility challenges in high school and then college and now at their job. And seeing that experience has got me thinking a lot about like my own privilege in all the places that I'm in, and it's motivated me to make an impact in my local community, which is UMBC.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ella. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a psychology major, also minoring in gender and women's studies, just put the form in. And accessibility matters to me because it impacts all of us. You know, I've been disabled for over half of my life, and I like to go by the philosophy that everyone is temporarily abled. You know, it comes for us one day or another. So especially at this school, I think that, you know, accessibility is what makes it a good school, you know?
Hi, I'm Maya. I'm a mathematics and computer engineering major. My pronouns are she, her, and accessibility interests me because I grew up with a mother who was disabled but refused to admit it. And I didn't know this until just this past year when I had my first episode, but I inherited the same chronic illness as her. And I think that it would be important for me to understand accessibility and navigate disability because I know throughout my life I'm going to get more disabled, and yeah.
Is this on?
No.
Is this on? Thanks, everybody. Teamwork works. So what are some of the biggest issues that you see facing students when it comes to accessibility at UMBC? And anybody can start, but for us, it's going to be you.
Okay. You know I like to talk. Yeah. So I'm a residential student here at UMBC, and my issues started at my orientation, in all honesty, when my mom and I came to tour the school. The school presented itself as this safe haven for disabled people with functioning door buttons, and they prided themselves on accessibility to us and only showed us the accessible areas. So I decided to come here. Don't get me wrong, I don't regret it, but I started my academic career and I felt deceived. So I ended up moving 3 times within my first couple weeks here. They put me in a room that did not meet my letter of accessibility requirements. They moved me into an apartment I couldn't even get in the door with my wheelchair. I threatened to sue them, and come to find out, they never put my accommodation letter in the system from my doctor. I had met with them I started school in September. I had met with them in April regarding my accommodations, and they never put the letter in the system. So my disabled self, who's out of state, my family was not available to come help me, had to move 3 separate times just to have a place to put my head at night. I ended up having to stay at friends' houses for a while in the area. Mind you, I knew one person moving up here. So I was trying to couch surf until I had a room. So there's that. Another thing, if you've noticed, residential areas are either at the top or the bottom of a very large hill. If you've tried to wheel or bike up a hill, it is a nightmare. I was completely unable to get to class. I had to load my wheelchair into my car, drive over to the Commons garage to get up the hill, fight the commuters for parking, and then make my way to class. I proceeded to spend $2,000 on a temporary electric wheelchair. I got my custom chair with the power assist covered by insurance, but that's the whole thing. The professors are not the problem. I'm gonna be so for real. The professors here are amazing. They've been nothing but accommodating to me, and many of them have voiced frustrations with SDS. I'm not gonna put anyone on blast right now, but we had a low vision student got put in my bioarchaeology and anthropology class, which is very hands-on handling artifacts. And SDS did not communicate with the professor what this person's needs were. They ended up having to drop a class in a topic they loved because the professor wasn't prepared for it, nor did they have any support in adapting the course. So one thing I would change for sure is having some sort of little shuttle for disabled students on campus. We have buses. Oh yeah, the public transit for the school isn't accessible. I can't get on public transit. It sucks. That's why, whole ordeal. So yeah, fix the public transit first of all. Second of all, have some sort of shuttle service for disabled students. I have had to assist a friend get back to their dorm multiple times. They've had to call UMBC police multiple times to get a ride back to their dorm because they were unable to walk the entire distance. And then the campus police doesn't know how to handle those situations. So I think there's a lot of lack of administrative oversight and failures. And I think they need to be held accountable for sure. Thank you.
Testing, testing.
No one had to turn it on.
Yeah, just hit the little button. It's got a power symbol. Anyways. Woo. Yeah, jumping off of that, I think really just to summarize, not like summarize my thoughts on the matter, communication. I have a lot of the same issues regarding accessibility and the fact that, I live up on the top of the hill. And right now, the Walker Garage elevator is broken and has been for multiple weeks. It's been broken since before spring break. And there's been no communication on a timeline about when that's going to get fixed. There's been no communication about, like the process of that, or even that the elevator was broken. I found out because I walked in and there was caution tape over the front of it. So, I mean, hey, that's a form of communication. But yeah, I mean, it's the same thing with the path behind the library, which is a major part of the accessible route on this campus. It has been intermittently opened and closed since last semester because it was resurfaced and it is now too slick to walk on when it gets wet. So it's actually hazardous to walk on after it rains. And so in theory, they are opening and closing the gates every day, depending on the chance of rain. The last 2 days are the only times I've ever seen it open since it closed. I think maybe one other time, but yeah, no communication. And the only reason I know that that's like what they're supposed to be doing is because I called maintenance several times and put in an accessibility concern form with the Office of Accessibility and Disability, which you can do that on my UMBC, by the way. You can report things if you don't like calling maintenance. Maintenance probably at this point knows my number. They see me coming, they're like, oh. But yeah, I think just a overall lack of communication, because going off of what you were saying, I had really similar issues with my housing accommodations when I first came here as a transfer student 3 years ago. I didn't get the housing accommodations I needed because Student Disability Service didn't communicate with Res Life. And when I came back to Student Disability Services and said, hey, I asked for this, you told me I was going to get it and I didn't get it, they very plainly said, oh, well, no, you didn't have the right kind of letter. And I was like, so what kind of letter do I need? And why did you tell me that I was going to be able to get this if I couldn't? And then I got the right kind of letter where I also threatened to sue the school. And then voila, I had my housing. But it has been, pardon my pun, with this campus on the hill, but it has been an uphill battle in a lot of ways. Anyways.
Is this thing on? Okay. um, some of the biggest barriers to accessibility on campus that I have seen, keep in mind, I just commute here, so I don't know the troubles of getting a dorm here with disabilities or like anything like that. But some of the biggest things I have seen are like the lack of knowledge about resources available to disabled students, the length of more accessible routes to places on campus. In fact, stairs tire me out, so I often end up walking up ramps despite my ability to walk. The lack of spaces specifically designed for disabled students to connect with one another in disability justice and just life in general, community is a very important part of a population's physical and mental well-being both. Um, um, Student disability services low adaptability to new or temporary disabilities and internalized ableism. I and the other panelists will explain what that means later. Lack of knowledge about resources on campus that are specific to or may help them manage their disability can affect their comfort navigating campus or interactions with abled peers, while the length of accessible routes on campus is problematic because they can tire out the students when trying to get to classes, leaving them less energy to use on their schoolwork. The lack of a hangout space specifically geared towards disabled students can make them feel isolated, while internalized ableism can affect new disabled students' ability to feel confident, empowered, and/or connected to their communities.
I'm going to echo with a lot of the panelists were talking about and say facility issues and real-time reporting of those facility issues.
I wanted to bring something up that you guys were talking about regarding the accessibility routes. It's also very difficult to actually find them. There is a map online, but when you're holding your phone and you're trying to walk around and you're trying to figure out, okay, which way is north? What building is this? It's not labeled. It's very difficult to navigate, and that's something that I've also experienced having to use the ramps as well. It's not labeled. I think that like they did with the temporary route, they put very visible signs. They put the stickers on the floor. I think that would be very helpful, be very unobtrusive as well, because a lot of the accessible routes are tucked in a corner somewhere.
I'm also a commuter. So I don't know if anyone's ever tried to park in accessible parking as a commuter, but all of the nearest spots are visitor parking. Which is a little bit outrageous in my opinion. Like I park in the Commons garage usually, and because I park on usually like the first or second floor, I just walk down the ramp, so I don't worry about stairs. But let's say you're a commuter who needs to park, who gets to school later, and you park. Yeah, no, you can't find parking anywhere. That's gonna be easy for you to walk. And speaking of the accessible routes, there is only one accessible way into the math building, and I'm saying this because all my classes are in the math building, and that door is always locked. I swear, it's always locked, and the only way you can open it is by pressing the wheelchair button. And if that button is broken, you're gonna have to force yourself to walk up the stairs or find the most inconvenient way possible to the math building, and you're gonna be late for class. It's very outrageous. I feel like they didn't. I feel like they didn't take into account accessibility at all when building some of the buildings on this campus. And I don't know. None of you guys mentioned this, but another problem I have is with the SDS Accommodate portal. I think it's mostly okay, but I do think it's a little bit outrageous that you have to submit an accommodation request to your professors, and then you still have to book all of your own accommodations in the portal. Like you still have to accommodate yourself, even though you have to ask the professors if you're allowed to do that. Which, if they have all of the information, they should be able to just send that to SDS, and SDS just books the exams for you. Like not everyone has the executive function to be able to do that. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Stella. Great, hold on. Great, thanks. See, there you go. What are just as a professor's, a professor point is that I've found that a lot of students are don't come here necessarily understanding how to use the portal or like what accommodations they have access to. Like if you came up from a place where you had accommodations, you know about those, but I have so many students who could benefit from accommodations and need them, but don't know that they even have that option. Also as professors, right, I have 100 and some students at a time, and what would be helpful is if those SDS letters were like loaded into Blackboard, which sometimes they are, which is really helpful. And yeah, so my next question, because we're not going to have time to go through all these questions. So my next question is, what are some tips and tricks that you guys or that you folks know and work with to succeed at UMBC? Because we can't like flatten the campus, right? But so how do you manage? And we're going to start at the other end this time.
Hello? Okay. Um, so I am like fully unmedicated for all of the problems that I have. So I do have to know a lot of coping strategies. And I think the way I manage is honestly, you have to communicate with your professors if they're gonna be understanding, because if say an assignment has 1 week to do it, I know it's going to take me more than a week to do it just because I have all of these problems. Um, so I communicate that with my professors, and um, and knowing that it's going to take me longer, I start my assignments very early, as early as I can. Um, something my dad also has ADHD, so he's always telling me make lists, write it down, and I'm always brushing him off, but it does work. He's right, it does work, because handwriting it, sticks it in your head more. I will say that doesn't work for everyone. It works for me, and if it works for you, I think you should try it.
I think the biggest tip is something that really isn't possible for everyone, unfortunately. I found that spacing out my classes so that I know I have more than enough time to get there has been very helpful. Currently, not due to choice, I have about 3 hours between classes, so I know that I can go home, lay down if I need to, and then come back. But again, that's not possible for everyone, especially with the upcoming schedule, because I know there's very limited spots.
This is kind of along the lines of what Maya was saying, but communication with professors in the terms of like more listening session events, because I feel like there's a disconnect between what professors think their students need and what students actually need. And like, it's not, I think like people might have the tendency to say like, well, I did the SDS thing. I kind of checked off that box. My class is accessible. No one's coming to me about inaccessibility in my class. So like, therefore that means that it is accessible, because the professors aren't hearing from students, and not all students are feeling comfortable to be able to say like, this is what I need. Or like, have you thought about how your class is inaccessible to me?
Some tips and tricks I know to help myself succeed include pacing myself, resting, taking some time between my obligations to decompress, keeping up with the literature related to both my coursework and activism, using organizational tools like my calendar app and timers, doing tasks alongside a friend, making my daily life and routine as predictable as possible, and meeting with my therapist on a regular basis.
Um, it's super cheesy and I'm so sorry, but I have like, the 3 C's, communication, community, and compassion. And I think that a lot of my fellow panelists have summed up communication really, really well. But along with that, engaging in community with people who understand my needs and or have the same challenges as me or have their own different challenges, but might be able to, see my point and I can see their point. It can be really restorative. I have been in the Disability Advocacy Union since my first semester here. A very close friend of mine is actually the person who started it before I came to the school, and we met through that. And he has been a massive source of like community for me and helped me understand a lot of the things that I am going through and that I only started to realize that I was going through when I started college. Additionally, just having compassion for myself and knowing that not every day is going to be like a perfect day where I can walk around without my cane, where I can, even get out of bed. And knowing that it is okay to like look for the support that I need.
So, my favorite thing to do in my free time is harass maintenance. they will be your best friend if you communicate with them directly. You put in order forms and stuff, it goes to the, it goes in order. They have some sort of priority algorithm and stuff. But you call them 20 times a day, they'll fix the elevator, they'll fix the button, they'll get it done. The dilemma, they don't really communicate with you directly. I don't know if they have a way to or not, but they usually communicate through, in my case, Res Life. And an elevator was down pretty much the entirety of the fall semester. The one that they put me on the second floor right by an elevator, but then didn't make sure the elevator worked. But yeah, harass maintenance. Tell your friends to harass maintenance. Ask your mom to harass maintenance. They'll be your friend. They want to help. They genuinely do. So, it's not on them. Also, why the hell do I have to threaten a lawsuit? Threaten money I don't have in order to have a place to function, you know what I mean? Like, why do I have to do that? I don't know. There's a lot of outrageous stuff.
There's a lot of outrageous stuff. You're right. But I do think this point about harassing maintenance is really important. Nobody on campus knows that it's an issue unless you tell them, right? If you don't tell SDS what you need, they aren't going to divine it, right? You have to tell them, and that is challenging, right? Especially when, at least like if you are dealing with, say, depression or social anxiety, saying call maintenance on the telephone is about the last thing I'm going to be able to do, right? So so figuring out how to communicate, I think, is really important. Key, I see your hand up. Go for it.
Yeah, if I can jump in on that, I said earlier, reporting things through the accessibility concern report form, super long name, but yes. It is so easy. It is literally a Google form. If you just look up UMBC Office of Accessibility and Disability, or even UMBC ADS, it will take you right to their My UMBC page. And at the banner on the top, it says Accessibility Concern Report Form. And you click on that, you fill it out, you give them the information, and they will email you back. Actually, it's not just like it just goes off into the internet and you never hear about it again. I have gotten, every single time I have made a report, I have gotten a response back from a real person with real solutions, or at very least communication about the issue. That is actually how I end up getting like a lot of answers about different things around campus and different problems that I saw. So it is incredibly important that you let people know if there are issues. And that is a great way to do it if you are not super inclined to pick up the phone and harass maintenance.
Thank you. So we have a bunch of other questions, but we've got 10 minutes left, and maybe someone out there has a question for our students. We've got one right in the front row.
We don't need a microphone. Okay. Thank you all. This is really enlightening. For me, I am an instructor here as well as a grad student. So I'm learning a lot. I'm curious, what are some things that your instructors have done to support you or other disabled students that are maybe not obvious? Like, of course, honoring, respecting, and working with accommodations. We're supposed to do that. We have to do that, right? Being flexible when we can. But what are maybe some less obvious or surface level things that maybe we know about already as instructors that we could be doing, or that you've had instructors do to help support you?
Is it on? Oh. I think being clear up front that you will be understanding and supporting, because for me, if I have an issue mid-semester and I need to ask for, say, an extension, I might be more hesitant to ask a professor who I'm not sure will take that news well, or who will be understanding. So even like within the first week, I had a professor who made it very, very clear that they want to support their disabled students, and that they will be understanding if a last minute issue comes up, or if something that's not necessarily covered under your accommodations happens, and if you need something, that they will work with you instead of being dismissive?
I think when I so I've taken a couple classes with Dr. Kate, and in the first one, she kind of opened class up with kind of like just the usual stuff, and also like, here's my attendance policy. And it was like so unheard of to me. But her attendance policy is that you show up to class when you can and you feel good about it. And you feel like you can go to class. And that was just like, that's absolutely unheard of in like STEM major. A lot of my classes, most of my classes, attendance is mandatory. Professors will even be snarky or make like or treat students differently based on how often they come to class. And I understand that from a professor side. Yes, like, why are my students not showing up? That they're missing the content that I'm teaching them for and that they're paying for and stuff. But there's so much that goes on in a student's life that like faculty don't have the context on. And so like that setting that culture of like, here is how my class is like structured and stuff, and here is what I kind of want out of my students at the beginning, and this is why like I care about this issue and I care for my students in this way, and this is how I care. Just like set such a good tone for the rest of the semester, and it was just so different than other classes, and that was like really cool. And then one more thing, I think. Um, so there is the digital accessibility deadline coming down in April. And I am working with a CSEE Inclusive Excellence Committee on getting faculty and students talking to each other about issues of accessibility in their computer science classes. And faculty, I think, sometimes have, like I said before, kind of checked off the box of accessibility, but are not maybe curious on like, how is my instruction being received by the students in my class? For example, one of my classes, the professor only has pictures of like text on his slides. So when you like hold it and drag on a cursor, it just highlights the whole image. It doesn't highlight it as text. So that you couldn't like pop that into a screen reader. You can't like put that into a different format that would work better for you. And like that is a more technically solvable problem than the issue of like, why didn't the professor ever think about how students are going to be interacting with and reading from his slides? Why was the professor kind of incurious about like, how are different student groups going to be working with like my content? And so like the culture of accessibility is more difficult. And that is a more difficult problem to solve than the technical, I think, aspect of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to chime one more thing in. Classes aren't prepared to have more than one wheelchair user. That's a big thing. I have a class, we have one accessible desk and 3 people that need it. He showed us how to flip our desks, like you know, the ones where you sit in it and then it has a little thing that goes over your lap. He showed us how to flip them around and put them in front of us, and made sure we had extra space. So we could have our desks flipped and be able to participate, you know? That way we're not all kind of trying to fight for the one accessible desk in the back. So him being willing to adapt the classroom itself was very helpful. He also went out of his way to make sure images and stuff had image descriptions, which is kind of like embedded descriptions of what the image is within like the image's data so a screen reader can pick up on it. And he also taught the class how to make image descriptions. So when any projects are done, everyone can access everyone else's work.
Just one quick thing on that classroom thing. If you're in a classroom and there isn't a desk for you, that's another thing. Contact SDS and they will make it happen so that there's more accessible seating. But yes, yeah, Emma, go ahead.
So, I would say like, keep in mind like any like potential like prior experiences like your student may have had with, you know, education. Some may, you know, still be struggling with, like, you know, that hesitancy to ask for help or for, you know, accommodations because of past negative experiences with classes or like learning in general. I mean, so what with that, um, give as many opportunities as possible for a student to ask for help and make it as clear as possible you will do what you can to help. At the same time, if they say they don't want help, respect their decision to refuse it. The disabled person knows more often than not what support they need from you or their community. In other words, offer help and support, but don't force them to accept it. And be mindful of potential barriers to help seeking and academic success.
Oh yeah, they all basically said what I was going to say. But yeah, making things readable. I have mild dyslexia, so just making your syllabus and your assignments readable, making sure the key information is like really highlighted, not literally highlighted, but say put in a way that students can easily find it is very important. I've had professors who hide assignments on Blackboard in like a folder in a folder in a folder or stuff like that, and it's so annoying. But just making it so that you can actually read the assignment. It's very simple, it's very basic, but you'd be surprised people don't do it.
Key, do you want to have the last word? All right, he's gonna have the last word because it's 12:29 and I don't go over time.
Um, wow, yeah, so fancy. I, you know, already like everything that my fellow panelists have said. And also like I, as a disabled person, don't really expect professors to be like an expert on every single disability in the world. It's not possible. However, knowing that there are certain things that can change, that access needs can change day to day, and that what worked for someone one day might not work the next. And also that flare-ups can happen at really any time, especially with physical disabilities. There's a lot of things that can impact them. The weather changes that we've had recently. I know a lot of friends and, you know, disabled people, myself included, who have like truly been like knocked down flat by the way that the weather has just been like all over the place. So just knowing that it's very fluid and it changes day to day, and we are not coming in like being like, well, I'm just gonna like blow this off because the weather is bad. It's like, no, I'm like, I can't get out of bed. Like I am truly head on the pillow as I am writing you this email saying I need an extension. So yeah.
Thank you so much. And I said you'd have the last word, but I have the last word. One thing I do with my my first day of school, first day of class thing is I have a Google form, and one of the questions is, what do you need to succeed in this class? Because everybody has access needs, right? It's just if yours are always met, you don't notice, right? But even giving some ideas of things that might be helpful can be helpful for students to understand that they have a right to have needs. And this is actually a place where I think that elders and young people have a lot in common, right? I learned a lot about access needs teaching at Charlestown, right? You can't have this many letters on it. You can't have this many words on a slide and expect anybody to be able to read it, for example. Anyway, thank you all so much. Those of you who I haven't met, hello, and students. 3 of you were in my class last semester, and it's great to have the gang all here again. So thank you very much. Joe Gadsby.
Hey.
Thank you again, everyone, for coming. This concludes this year's Spotlight Symposium. As I mentioned earlier, there are print evaluation forms on both tables, one next to the muffins and one next to the reading list. Also take a look at some of the selections that were pulled and put on display that are from the reading list, and there are print copies of the reading list as well. The QR code goes to the online evaluation form, so please fill it out. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, no. These are graduates. What are you doing? Our seminar related to this.